going to make, and now I've got to get to my, then you need to share that over the cord.
Edward's it where you are?
Yes, he's got it.
Yeah.
So,
Is Lynn?
yeah.
Must be zooming.
Yeah.
And then just select that one. Oh, that one, sorry. Oh no.
Oh, I know what I didn't do. Take the cash out of my jeans and put it in
Meeting will be live now.
Good evening, Lynn.
Now. Oh, okay. Hi, Lynn.
Recording.
Okay, so we're kia ora. We're live now, Di, and ready to go. Yeah, it's past our advertised time, so we do need to open the Strategy and Planning Committee today. Welcome, everyone. At this point, we have no apologies that I'm aware of. I think that...
Carmen's just around.
Oh, great. Welcome, Carmen, and welcome, Lynn, who joining us on Zoom. Kia ora. We do have Councillor Hobbs and Councillor Scott here. I guess it's apologies for lateness. And Councillor Laws, sorry, who isn't with us at the moment, but hopefully will join us sometime during the meeting. Welcome, Councillor Scott and Councillor Hobbs. We're just getting underway. There's no public forum. Oh, sorry, no apologies. Yeah. So, no public forum. We are confirming the agenda as far as I'm aware. And the reminder of conflicts of interest if anyone wants to raise any, either do that now or at the time that the issue arises. Thank you. Confirming the minutes. So we just need to consider those, that they're a true and accurate record. And if there's any corrections, you're moving. Councillor Wilson, thank you. Anyone care to second? Councillor Noon, all in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. The outstanding actions from resolutions of the committee.
Madam Chair, happy to.
Yeah.
Yep, happy to update Madam Chair with regards to the item to do with South Dunedin Harbourside. I just note in the governance forward planner there is an item, South Dunedin update for the 27th of October council meeting. So I'm not sure whether, Gavin, that's locked in, but potentially there is something coming in terms of what we can expect from any infrastructure improvements in collaboration with the city.
Through you, Madam Chair, my report to Council in the 27th of October will be around the program management arrangements and the work we're doing on a project stock take. It won't get into the issue of potential governance arrangements.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. That'll inform us of the program works and then help to guide us in making perhaps further decisions around governance and relationships and any structures that we can arrange there. We'll look forward to that report. This will remain then in action at this point in terms of the governance relationship. So thanks for the update. Okay. We have 4 reports today, and the first is the TAG report back. So as I understand it, Gwyneth is going to come and present her paper, which as you'll see is put in PowerPoint format, but is not a presentation, it's a report. Thanks, Gwyneth. Oh, you're back from the table, sure. Thanks, Gary.
Hi, yes, so I can take the paper with read as read, just one minor correction on paragraph, sorry, I'm just going to get to page 17. We're meeting in October, not November. We're meeting next week. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you for the update. It's fairly straightforward, I think, paper for our information there, but I can open it up for any questions at this point. Councillor Hobbs.
Yep, I've got a number of questions, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Yep.
This is on the very first page, and it's about the background. It says TAG was established in early 2019, where the purpose of the TAG is to support the ORC and the Manihirakia Reference Group with science and technical advice. I don't think early 2019, that was the last council, wasn't it? So was there a problem? What was the problem that TAG had to be set up? Can somebody explain that to me? Was there no science in the ORC?
Perhaps Ms. Gardner, that would be your time, yeah?
No.
Oh.
No, sorry, it was my time,
Yeah.
but no
Yeah.
to the member's question about was there no science in the ORC? No, that wasn't the case. But as part of the consultation that was done around how we might run the process moving forward, it was a staff recommendation that we set up the MRG and also the tag. The idea around the tag was to look at science from different parties and to see where there was common ground.
Sorry.
As opposed to some kind of, if you like, approval process. Yes, that's the way that I saw it working anyway.
My understanding at the time, just reflecting on some of Andrew Newman's words as well around key aims, would be I guess discussing methodology as well and getting some agreement where possible on particularly the methodology used in some of the studies. He focused quite a bit on that as well at the time. Yeah.
Okay, following that, if I go therefore into the part which is called the overview, the overheads, in the, there's a dot point that says ORC to undertake analysis of flows for a range of scenarios. TAG will assess each flow scenario against the agreed ecological health criteria. The dis-ease that I'm beginning to feel is that somehow TAG takes precedence in its science over the work of the ORC scientists. And I have to say that's a problem that I'm reading into this. If somebody would like to explain to me how that isn't, could they?
Might be a Gwyneth question.
I can have a go. That's really about a practicality as much as anything as well. The tag in of itself doesn't necessarily do the analysis. They will review it and assess it because they are. It's a bit like a kind of a. I don't want to call it pew, but in some sense it's a sounding board of other scientists. The analysis might be done by ORC scientists. It might be ORC might get a consultant into the analysis depending on what expertise are in. But really, the group is there to provide advice. They don't necessarily do the analysis themselves.
So if they don't do the analysis, and I presume that most of the stuff that was put up to us 2 months ago by the ORC was peer reviewed?
So what was put up was a policy position.
Yeah.
Yeah. A number of the technical reports had been peer reviewed and some hadn't. Yeah.
And some hadn't?
So, yeah. In terms of inputs.
Which ones hadn't? Are they the ones
I
that
might
are
have to
mentioned
come back
in here?
to. Hey.
Are they the ones that are mentioned in here which,
The ones mentioned in here are being peer reviewed because they hadn't been peer reviewed at that point in time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have something up here that says, note, this is not an assessment against the NPSS or the NPS 2020, which is a policy assessment. What in God name does that mean?
So the NPS is a national policy statement. So I guess is this from the minutes?
Established criteria for ecological health from a science perspective.
Yes.
This is not the same as the national policy statement because that is a policy assessment.
Yes. So the national policy statement is a policy statement, and ultimately the policy team will take a range of inputs, including the science, and make an assessment against the policy statement as to whether or not the policy position meets it.
So how the hell did a policy statement, which is based on science as much as on policy, okay, in fact more, how the hell does that have no science in it, that a small group in Central Otago can put themselves up against that?
The assessment is meant to be in terms of the policy position put forward in terms of the manaherakia is that, does it meet the requirements of the MPS? So the policy team wouldn't want to be providing advice to you as councillors that doesn't meet the requirements of the MPS. So they, as a policy team, will make that assessment rather than the science team.
So the tag won't have, so this says here, establish a criteria for ecological health from a science perspective. Note, this is not an assessment against
The MPS?
the MPSM, which is a policy assessment.
No.
That's the view of TAG, yes.
So we're saying that this is in no way going to set up against the MPS.
No, it's just saying it's not an assessment against the MPS. That needs to be done from a policy perspective, not from a science perspective.
Sarah might elaborate as well how that all fits together.
Gunna's perfectly right. Just the simple way that I think of it is that science is an input to the output you end up with.
Right.
Okay, so science is an input. So is my tauranga and the cultural assessments that we get from Kaitahu. So is the economics assessment.
As community.
And then the policy team takes those things and works within the framework that it has in order to give you an output or an answer, if you like. So science it's an important input, but it is just an input.
You'll recall we in the paper on the 25th, we provided a diagram that showed a range of inputs. This is TAG being clear that they are just part of the science input.
So again, the last thing I'm trying to do, because what I feel, this is what I feel at the moment and thinking about it, is that this council has voted to put up a small group, nowhere near as resourced, up against the ORC team to relook at some science again. Have I got
that's a fair question,
Right, yeah.
Gunnar. It's just not.
Councillor Talbot, the question is Councillor Hobbs rather than a statement. Yep.
So the question is this science group re-evaluating, and it's a much smaller group, the work already done?
And when you say the work already done, do you mean the
Science work already done.
Are they re-evaluating it?
Yeah. They are doing a documentation and review of a hydrology model, and there's something about drift studies, and that is all I can see. And we know the problem around the drift studies is about the seasonal issues around that.
So I'm not sure if re-evaluate's the right word. There are some pieces of work that are this group is saying they would like to do that haven't necessarily been done. But I don't know that they're going to re-evaluate the position. I'm not sure that's the right term.
There are three things: invertebrate drift study, hydrology model, and habitat modelling, including tributaries. And those were the tributaries that were held back from us. We didn't have access to. Is this correct? Because they were part of the Plan Change 7.
So my understanding is that that they hadn't been formally handed over to or requested, even ORC hadn't necessarily requested it from, but had, we hadn't formally requested it as part of this process. But we had the access to the outputs, obviously.
I'm not happy. I think we've been.
We have a number of hands have gone up. So the first one was Councillor Scott, then Councillor Wilson, then Malcolm.
I don't need to.
Did you have yours? Sorry.
Mine's been answered. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Scott and actually then Forbes, I must hear.
Yeah, I was just going to reply in relation to the initial discussion around the concept of having a tag. I mean, somewhere in the whole process, resource management process, that there'll be various technical experts, and there are efficiency gains to get those technical experts talking sooner rather than later. Yeah.
That's it. Yep,
That's it.
that was the aim. Yep, great. Councillor Forbes, then.
I was backing up into your actual report, and I just wondered, I wasn't really clear on the climate change considerations. I was wondering where that was at. I know it's over a 10-year time frame, as you say, but it seems astonishing that we wouldn't, that what's happening in the climate change, what I'm observing happening, would produce changes within historic flow variability. And I'm wondering if it's considered the cumulative effect, because each individual thing might be within historic variability, but have we considered cumulative effect of the hydrology of glacier storage, for example, changing?
I'll have to come back to you on that one. I'm not sure. This is.
I'm looking at the actual report, so it's
paragraph 15.
Yeah,
It's a
paragraph
direct cut and paste from the paragraph from the report on the 25th, and well, actually, it's not direct cut. I've merged slightly, but I'd have to come back to you on the details of that technical report.
I might fire you an email on that. I just felt there might be more impact from droughts and floods than we have had previously, I would have thought. But
Point of clarification. Is it not said in the latest climate change reports that there appears to be an increase in rain levels in that area?
No, I don't think it did. I think
Well, it said 5% increase expected.
I thought that was along the coast.
Oh, no, he's right. It's
Along the
it's
ridges of
the
Venus
climate.
area.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's right, it does.
Thanks. We're uncertain on that exactly at this point. Thank you, Di. We've just got Councillor Laws joined us as well. Welcome, Councillor Laws. We're just having questioning at the moment on the TAG report, and I've got a list of people. And the next one is Councillor Wilson.
Oh, I just want to check, there's a comment in here about this is based on doing the work that you've got in here and no other work being required.
The timeframes.
Yeah. So the question is, if they needed, if by agreement they thought they needed more work and or done, is there a budget, and is that likely to be pushed out, or could it be that could be done in parallel?
No, there's no budget. As I've said, there's no budget for this.
Yeah.
And yes, that would change the timeframes as indicated in the report.
So would you come back to us if they thought that work needed to be done? And
Yes, we will report back.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Malcolm.
mine was exactly the same question, because if you do perceive new work to be done, that would need to be budgeted. So you'd come back. No, that's really good. Just on a standard consent, a water user would normally just use one a consultant and a scientist. Is that the sort of general? Whereas here it appears that to work on this river, we're using the combined knowledges of Okoha, Department of Conservation, Fish and Game, Omacare Irrigated Company, the Otago Water Users Group, and all the staff of Otago Regional Council. So it seems to be a pretty powerful crew that is supporting our work here. But generally, it would be just
Begs the question.
well, my question is at the start. My question is at the start.
That begs the question.
All right, yep, thank you. Councillor Malcolm, yep. You got the question, Quanah?
I'm afraid I don't have much experience in consents, and I'd have to defer that. I'm not sure if someone with consents experience in.
We're talking about a plan change, aren't we? So
I mean
a plan development.
Yes, we're talking about plan development, so there are a number of inputs into that, and I think
the question was how many scientists would a consent applicant normally use?
In terms of a consent, well, it really depends. I mean, it depends on the nature of the application. It depends on the complexity of the catchment. It also, so for example, if you were dealing with a really significant take that had a lot of associated consents with it, then you would see, potentially you'd have ecologists, but ecologists who perhaps were even more specialised, depending on what was in the environment. You'd have hydrologists, you would have planners, and potentially there, economists could have cultural assessment. It just really depends on the area you're working in and the extent of the consent. So it's not a one size fits all kind of answer, really.
With respect, it would be the same as this here, because if people are in a consent and submitting to a consent, they also will want their scientist perspective, which is exactly what's happening here.
And you may well, as a commissioner or whoever's leading, or freshwater commission, whoever lead pre-hearing meetings and get all of those experts together in a similar type of forum even. There's a range of different options, isn't there? But thanks for your observation, Councillor Malcolm. Did you have any other questions?
No, I'd be happy to move that recommendation if there's no further questions.
Councillor Calvert had her hands up for questions. I'll come back to that, and also Councillor Deaker.
Just a brief thank you to the staff for actually setting up this group in the first place with the people it has. Have we, because it seemed to me a very good plan to have a variety of organisations involved in that, because it was more likely to end up with a result that everybody was sort of a bit more on board with. That's part of our community, what we're obliged to do to engage with the community. And so I'm just reinforcing that seemed to me a good thing when it was set up. But I take it we have no reason to think that, apart from Matt Hickey and Roger Williams, that the rest of the people on TAG are anything but who they look like, namely that they're representatives in some form or other for national organisation like DOC or Fish and Game, or in fact our organisation locally. So of those 9, was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8? Is there any reason to think that, apart from the one who's specifically from ORUG and the expertise provided by the irrigation in Falls Dam, that anybody else has any little group connection to Central Otago?
Is the question that they are independent experts?
So maybe they're from the organisation they say they're from, rather than that they're a little local.
Yeah, maybe talk about the terms of reference.
So
or how that all works.
the terms of reference it refers to members, which are organisations, and those organisations can choose a representative, and they are the representatives that have been put forward.
Yeah.
It's not really up to ORC to then make a judgment call as to whether or not they are employed by those organisations, or they are a consultant to those organisations. And there's a conflict of interest that sits with the terms of reference to help try and manage the perceptions around conflict.
Excellent. The other bit of the question is that I take it that unusually, probably because we've asked for the minutes to come here, these minutes have been approved. Usually minutes are approved at the next meeting of something, but these ones have actually been approved by those people as they would at the next meeting usually. So these people all have agreed.
As much as it is awkward because we haven't met, and normally you would agree at a meeting. But we have gone through a process where everyone's been able to comment, and those comments have been incorporated into it.
So these people are all happy about, when I say happy that that's a proper rendition of the minutes of the meeting.
I hope so. It's always awkward when you've got people making comments on top of comments on top of comments, but we gave everyone a window of opportunity to go in and make comments.
Sorry,
onto the same document.
We're not trying to interrupt you. We're talking about that point you raised about confirming minutes.
Yes, I was just acknowledging the awkwardness of the fact that they're unconfirmed, but they've been sort of
what you're asking.
Pre-confirmed.
Yep.
Yes, but I think that given that the request for minutes came from this table, and it was made perfectly clear to me that they were to be provided before this meeting, that put us in a position where we couldn't follow normal process, which meant that Gwyneth had to do the best she could in terms of getting the TAG members comfortable. So she's done the best she could, and you have the minutes here today, but there is always a risk when you don't confirm them through the usual channels that there is some kind of issue that might arise
At the next meeting.
Yeah, so can I just say thank you, and I acknowledge the awkwardness of that process caused probably by us, but thank you for your efforts in doing that.
If there's
How
changes,
will we
can always-
handle the minutes going forward then, I guess, would be the obvious question after that. So that maybe that needs to be discussed within TAG of how that works. But given that the terms of reference say that it reports to the council.
So the terms of reference don't say that. The
Okay.
terms of reference say they provide advice to MRG and ORC, so they
That's
don't report
true.
to the council. Yeah. There was a request of councillors that their minutes be attached to the report.
So I guess it would be up to TAG to be, I can understand.
TAG members indicated they were okay that it would be
Yeah.
that could be attached, but yes, there is a process, a clunky process. We've endeavoured to do our best job as we could. If they got changed at the next meeting, then we would have to come and back to you and let you know.
And it's great that everybody came on board from TAG. There was some suggestion that maybe people wouldn't want to re-engage with it. So,
Yep,
and that was due
not
to
quite
doubtless
a question at this point, but yeah.
No, but that was due doubtless to our staff, some encouragement and things, and thanks for that too, Gwyneth.
Okay. Councillor Deaker was next, and then sure. Oh, sorry,
Just want to
Gwyneth.
clarify,
Yep.
not all TAG members have committed long-term commitment, but they have committed short-term commitment.
Thank you, Councillor Deaker.
That was my question.
Okay.
That and the fact that we haven't got a budget going forward for any work that the TAG decides must be done before they can come back to us.
Yes.
Where are we at with that?
So we have no budget because TAG was envisaged as having completed their work at the same time as the MRG. And so we did not budget for TAG to do any further work this financial year.
And if they decide to do more?
Well,
So they advise ORC.
Yeah.
So ORC will then make a decision as to whether or not they do the work.
There are some expenses related to TAG because some TAG members are paid.
By whom?
Us.
Do we pay for a dock?
I'm not going to go into
No.
individual arrangements.
We won't go into individual arrangements.
Some members of TAG are paid.
But
They were discussed at a meeting at the time, and council agreed to how we proceeded, and some people chose to fund themselves.
So this was 2019 you're talking about? That discussion?
Prior to.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Forbes, was it?
Just a quick one, Gwyneth, about the timeframes. So we're looking at having this sort of finished, wrapped up March 2022. How does that impact everything else going forward? Does it impact?
What do you mean by everything else? Sorry?
Well, the next one's off the block.
The land and water plan?
Yeah.
Obviously TAG does take time and commitment, so that does have some impact. But in terms of the works that are underway, I guess we were aware that they were coming, so it's just that if additional work comes through, that's when you start talking about real pressures. Meetings and preparations for meetings, it's something that we're trying to manage as best we can, but if there's substantial new work that comes on board, then we will have to go back.
Is it a risk to our 2023 deadline? This is probably the...
I'm not sure I'll call it a risk at this stage, but it is extra pressure, yes.
Thank you.
Hey. Mr. Ellison, are you putting your hands up? No? Yeah.
No, I wasn't. I just appreciated the report and the transparency it brings and better clarity, I think. I like to, and it's good to see the conflicts of interest being properly addressed as well.
Thanks. I've finished with the questions then at this point. Councillor Malcolm,
Yeah, I'd like to move that
yeah.
and have a right of.
Sure.
talking
Have we got a
before we vote.
seconder? Councillor Noon, right of reply. Or sorry, you want to do that at the end, once.
Yep.
Anyone who wants to say anything at this point. Councillor Hobbs, first up.
I don't want to note this report, and it's not because the report is poor. It is because I didn't think that I was able to express at the time that fairly shambolic meeting with emotions coming up aboard how much I opposed this piece of work. I see this as a report from a group that, in my opinion, was given an unclear task from a majority of councillors, and it's been an attempt to tidy up that task. I cannot, and I have never seen any value in this extra work, okay, at all. And I'm not alone in thinking that. That might not have been accomplished while we're doing ongoing work. And it was used as a means to stop noting the minimum flow.
Point of order. That's an inference that is not substantiated, and I would ask the member to clear that up, because that is certainly no delay was ever intended or ordered. So,
well, then, sorry, can I answer that?
Sure, keep going,
Can I answer
Councillor
that
Hobbs?
very clearly? There were two motions that were in the paper. One was put on the flow, and one was put on what the preferred minimum flow was. This motion, from which this committee has been re-energised and given a life tag, that motion was put up, and we were not allowed to debate the original motion that sat in there on the books. It was a sleight of hand. And it really was a sleight of hand.
Point of order, that's not proper too.
I think we need to.
Councillor Hobbs, you keep
Thank
talking,
you.
you keep
Thank
talking to
Councillor
whoever you
Malcolm.
want, but the reality is
Councillor
we're not
Malcolm.
delaying it. We want
Councillor Malcolm.
process.
I would like to state at this point that this paper is on a reporting back from the tag. It's a report to note the minutes of, what happened at that meeting. I don't think we need to re-debate something which isn't on this paper.
I'm stating very clearly why I don't want to be a part of noting this report, because I think, as I've just expressed, that the whole thing is not as kosher as it ought to be.
Thank you. Yeah.
Is
Okay.
that
No,
acceptable?
Councillor Malcolm. Last time we all need to actually leave because, it's interrupting people and interrupting the meeting. Councillor Hobbs, you've spoken.
Can I ask a question?
I've asked people to stick to what the paper is on. Thank you. Councillor Malcolm, are you reserved? You've got a right to speak at the end.
A question. At what stage can I?
We've done questions, but
well, it's about process.
Okay.
At what stage can I ask the chair to take note of spurious comments against other councillors that could possibly be a code of conduct? So at what stage can I ask for that to be sorted?
Right on.
I have not noted any of them at the moment, but I don't think that's on what we're talking about either at this point. So thank you. Right. Any others that are on this paper and debating the motion? Councillor Noon.
Just very briefly, really appreciate the report, Gwyneth. This hasn't been an ideal process, but the intentions are genuine from the councillors that supported this motion back on the 25th of August, and the information you've provided for us today helps to clarify some of the lack of understanding of perhaps around the governance table back on the 25th, and I'm talking about myself in particular. So really just looking forward to the next stage and the next report, so we can move forward and focus on, resolving the incomplete science, because that's exactly what we've asked to do, and that process is being triggered by noting this report. So thank you.
Thank you. Just, sorry, while you were speaking, it reminded me as well, probably don't need to comment on it, it's not particularly this paper, but just reminding us that after this paper we were going to report back to the Minister potentially as well with where we got to. So thank you. Yep, thanks Councillor Noon. Anyone else? No? Okay, well you reserve your right to respond there, Councillor Malcolm.
Thanks, Chair. I just note under the purpose, before accepting this, voting on this report, that the purpose is progress towards finalising the required science. And again, in our executive summary, we state the required science. We do appear, and it is confirmed in this report, that the hydrology model that we had talked about and advised in February that had been confirmed was not actually confirmed for some reason that we're probably advised incorrectly there. And we also hadn't sought approval from stakeholder groups to use their technical work that had been done. So there's a couple of things that needed tidied up to ensure that that should be done. So again, we thank staff for a very good report. The work TAG is doing under their terms of reference, and would trust that staff, if additional funding or workloads were to be considered, that they report back to us immediately to garner support.
Point of order,
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
There was a comment there made about hydrology report. I was looking at the advisor at the end of the table, and I didn't think that you thought there was a confusion. Can we clarify that, please?
I'll allow that. Yep. Have we?
I just think I'm not sure that staff have ever said that there's been a peer review of the hydrology model done. So I'm not sure about what advice you're referring to. That's all.
Sorry. Restate then, Councillor Malcolm, what you said about the uncertainty around the hydrology model, and we'll clarify that.
I said that it appeared that we did not have an agreed hydrology model as advised in February.
So
I'll read your exact parts of here.
Okay.
I'm just not sure where the disagreement is. I'm not clear.
I'm not disagreeing.
Okay. All right.
Happy with the report.
We'll move on from that. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, Councillor Malcolm. Yep. Have you finished your road reply?
Yep.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt that. And the seconder on that, was that you, Councillor Noon? Did you want to speak?
I've already spoken.
Okay, great. Okay, well, we'll put the motion then to note. All in favour?
Aye.
Against?
No.
Okay, carried. Thank you. Right, the next paper then is the strategic directions, which is actually a really important paper as well, and confirming the strategic thank you, welcome back Councillor Kelleher as well. Strategic directions which were developed in 2020 and as an initial step in preparing the LTP, but also internal direction and the way we engage with communities, describing what we do as a council, important work that we've done as governors and staff, clarifying what ORC is and what we do and what we aspire to be. And as a result of going through the LTP, there's some clarification of what our strategic direction is and a few changes there as well. So we are joined by Anne and Sylvie. Sylvie, will you be presenting the paper predominantly today? Yep, great. Would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Really, the paper says it all. So in 2020, we had a series of workshops with you to develop strategic directions for ORC, and it was to lay the ground to the LTP development later on in the year. So in August, we came to an agreement in principle over strategic directions, but we all agreed that to ensure that the strategic directions document and the LTP aligned, we would wait until the end of the LTP development to further align the strategic directions. So that's what we've done through this paper. Gwyneth has just tabled a preliminary design for the strategic directions. It's not necessarily what's going to go to the public, but it just gives you an idea of the visual identity or the branding. The format of the public document is probably going to be slightly different. So what we did was made changes based on the LTP decisions, and we tried to make sure that all the changes were kept minimal and that we kept the integrity of the document as we discussed last year. So that's pretty much it.
Right. And we've just been handed a really great sheet here in summary of what the strategy contains. So did you want to just touch on what this is as well?
Yes, so this document that we just handed is a design version of the appendix that you've been given through the paper. So it's exactly the same text, exactly the same content, but it gives you an idea of the visual identity of the document as we're going to communicate on it with staff internally and with the public externally. Yeah, so that's...
Sylvie, sorry, Councillor Deaker will come to you in just a moment. Would you like to touch on the power of the strategy, I suppose, in terms of driving internally, actually, Ms. Gardner as well, internally, I suppose, what it means for ORC as an organisation, as well as the outward facing, because I guess for the community, a lot of this will be nuts and bolts of how ORC works. They'd rather see the doing, I suppose, that comes as a result of this, but how powerful it may be as a tool for us internally too as an organisation, how that all lines up.
Yes, so when we prepared the strategic directions, we focused on its role in terms of the LTP, but we have to think about the strategic directions as a key document to actually start the narrative and the story about what ORC does and the commitments we make. So it's very much at the center of ORC's identity, and it needs to be at the center of everything we do and how we do it as staff and as councillors, and how we communicate to stakeholders and to the public about who we are, what we do, and what we aspire to. So it also helps to manage, I guess, public expectations about our role, the boundaries of what we are going to do in the next years, and our role and mission, so that it's really going to help design a brand and have a very consistent communication around what ORC does and what it is as an organisation.
Councillor Deaker.
Yeah, the first thing I want to say is this is an outstanding piece of work. I wonder why we haven't had it a long time ago, but we've got it now, and that's great. I like the way your paper, Sylvie, has shown us its developmental stages, including the track changes from which this came. I know paragraph 17, which you've just been referring to, the production of this proposed document, says it will produce an A3 folder brochure to A4. Now, I think that means a document that looks like that, an A3 folded over to 4 A4 sides, which means this format is entirely wrong.
It's not entirely wrong. It's, as I said, it gives you an idea of the identity or what it will look like, but it's not the final format that we could.
So, am I right that it will finish up looking like that? Absolutely. That's great. And you'll go to a portrait format?
Most probably, yes.
Yes, all right. Now, I was just hoping that my surmise was true. And having said all that, it's still an outstanding piece of work. The content's top rate. It's simply a matter of now producing it in a way which we can have at receptions, at meetings, in our briefcases, to remind us of what we do every day, which is great.
All right, thank you. Councillor Calvert.
a little question and a big question. The little question is, how do we promote safe land-based transport? How might we go about doing that? Little question as in contained question.
So the first thing I'll say is a strategic direction doesn't necessarily have to reflect exactly what you're doing now. It's a direction. It's where you want to be. But maybe, I don't know if Gavin wants to speak to what we might be doing now in terms of achieving that.
Well, just before Gavin talks about that specifically, I think it's really important to think about how we use the strategic direction. So the strategic direction is if you like, I think of it as the branch that everything hangs off. So when we have our conversation tomorrow about the annual plan, a key document to have beside you is the strategic directions, because actually what we've committed to, or the direction that you've said you would like us to head in, is sitting right beside you in those strategic directions. So when we plan our work program, that's the key document that we look to, and that's the key guidance that we take. Of course, there are other things that we take into consideration, like any compliance with laws and expectations that we have, but the strategic directions frames that up. So we're just adopting them today because we had agreed with you that we would come back to this after the LTP, which is a little bit back to front. So I appreciate your question, Councillor Carr, but I guess what I'm saying is that this is the beginning, and then we plan from here in a way that matches with the strategic directions. So, really good question, maybe something to keep in mind for the annual plan conversation tomorrow.
Well, perhaps it leads into the big question, which is, I think you said something like that this document helps people understand what it is we do. To me, what partly the utility is that it could help people understand what it is we don't do, so as they don't have expectations of us that are unreasonable or unmet, and that we just can't possibly do it. So this document, is there anything much we could do in Otago? Does this give people any idea of what we wouldn't do that will allow them to understand? Do you see the question?
Yeah.
And it's the sort of holistic question of, if it's telling us what we will do, what is it that we won't? So as that don't even think about, because that's not what we've put here as our strategic direction. What won't we do?
So, for example, it's anything which is not on the list. But if you think about it, we are not saying that we're going to build any houses, or that we're going to. You see what I mean? So we are not into education, or we are not. So that's what it means. But it's hard to write document, otherwise in the negative.
Yeah.
Yes,
Hello, I see, and don't do this.
No, I'm just saying, if you look at this document, you ought to be able to see something, I would have thought, that says, for example, we monitor, just take air quality, for example, that we might say we monitor air quality, we prosecute people for not doing air quality, we educate people to help them understand what air quality we need. So let's just say that's what we said we did in air quality. And then somebody came up and said, well, why don't you give me some money to do such and such? We could answer them with, our strategy didn't say we would fund improved air quality. What it said was that we would... See what I mean? So as that we could look and say that isn't in the things we said we'd do.
So the first thing I'll say is a strategic direction of its very nature does have fairly high level language, so that you have room to plan underneath it. So you're not going to be so specific as you might do in an annual plan, because that's when you're talking about planning as opposed to setting a direction. However, I do agree that it does set boundaries. It should set expectations, as Sylvie said, about what we do. And it is a good guidance if someone came and asked, well, will the ORC does this? If you can't map it under something in this document, it cannot be linked to it, then you're probably asking the question, either the document's wrong and this group needs to reconsider the document, or it's not aligned to what ORC is here to deliver.
Yes, thanks. So that was just sort of my question was, had that lens been sort of looked at as a...
Thank you, yeah. Okay, we've got a few people. I'm just going to note that so Michael Laws knows that I've seen his hand up. We've got Councillor Wilson, Forbes, Scott, and then Councillor Laws so far.
Just a minor ones. You've got an environment under our vision for Otago. You've got our environment that supports healthy people and ecosystems. And I'm just wondering, in light of the NPS, whether that's in the right order, that I think the ecosystems went before people, or have I got that wrong?
Where is this one? Oh, it's in our vision for Otago.
Yeah.
I think we ended up with that order after discussions.
I know that we may have had discussions on that. I wasn't quite sure.
I think we had a discussion. I'm just trying to recall a discussion. It was a while back now where we sat in a meeting room. We talked about the order that we would. Was it the vision or was it the mission?
It's a vision.
So healthy ecosystems includes people and healthy people. So yeah, I don't know. It's just the NPS I thought actually gave a different direction in freshwater for that, but that's okay. In your word change, I see that you've gone away from the words we and a whole lot of this stuff, and then you've added them in or kept them in at the top. And I appreciate you say what we will do, but I'm just wondering if it's consistency. So you see that on page 28 of 45, you've taken out all of the words we and you've added them in above, which is an odd peculiarity. And was it intentional?
I mean, it's a little bit more descriptive text up top versus list, but I mean, I don't know if people were general agreements, then we can.
The lower one was about removing repetition.
Yeah,
whereas
okay.
It's part of text above.
Okay. And the main question is, can I understand what you mean by our values? And I just want to tease out, in light of discussions that we're all having, about what collaborative means, what trustworthy means, and what an open and honest means. Because what I think it means and what you think it might mean is that I'm fronting in Catlins about land water regional plan coming up. And what that means is, are we just ensuring that we're not just going to do an information dump on them, but that we're collaborating to hear from them? I just want to get some feeling to make sure we're consistent.
Yep. And so, as we've sort of indicated, this document is our aspirations and the directions we want to head towards. And these are values that we've listed, that we've discussed before, and I think have just come through from previous in terms of keeping those values as well. I don't know if Amanda wants to talk to anything about in terms of internally any strategies that or work being done to support those values?
Just with where the values came from to start with, then Amanda can follow on. Do you remember, those of you who were here, the values came as a result of a joint piece of work between the governors of the previous triennium and staff, and there were several workshops undertaken, and so they were landed as a complete set of values for Team ORC as a whole. So that's the history behind them. And Amanda might have more to add.
Yeah, I guess just to add, we use them as a internally as a framework for our how we work together a lot. So we have them in our performance agreements in terms of how we want to work together. We've obviously embedded them in the strategic directions. We frame our annual staff awards around the values. So yeah, we use them as an internal behavioural reference a lot.
I guess it would be like higher order policy, wouldn't it? Like the MPSFM, and then we have to embed them through our lower order. So we're going to need to define what it means as we do each and every task we do, I suppose, and that's up to us all to do that and make sure we're comfortable that we've portrayed them as we hope to. But it's a really good point, yeah.
Well, especially the collaborative one, and if we look back at the slide we got from Gavin in the liaison group discussion, and he had several parts that you could be at, and I can't remember what the last one was, but you didn't want to be quite at that point, but collaborative was certainly on the right of rather than the left-hand side. That's where I hope that we are going to be when we go out to community meetings, but I just want to, because that gave us a spectrum of actions. This by itself doesn't give us that spectrum, and I just want to make sure that I know that we've got a lot of consultation to do, that is seen as one where we're listening as much as we're telling in all of our meetings, because I do think that that's been a problem in the past.
The definition of collaboration is working together. I mean, I think you can't really go wrong if you use that.
If it's that simple, good.
Yes, and I think it's really important also to understand that the values are not just about the work we do outside, they're about the work we do together.
Yeah.
It's good to know it's still high on our list, though, and we keep reaffirming that, so that's really good. Collaborative. Councillor Wilson, any other questions? We're done? Great. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you. Great work, you guys. That's really, really good to see. And I see this as if we are committed to this, then we do this. And so it kind of works that way for me, which I think is really helpful, even if we can't always manage it. That's what we're trying to do. I had a couple of concerns, and some of these, and it may be way too late to bring them up, but I'll just mention them anyway. We've got our vision for Otago, an environment that supports healthy people and ecosystems. I'd like to see definitions of those things, not in this sort of short document, but that they're underpinned behind, because I worry that that particular statement doesn't recognise the intrinsic value of the environment. It's just a little bit of a worry. It's kind of there, and so I don't want to wordsmith that for you, but I just want to know that there's something behind that we can go to when we need to. I don't know, is there something behind these that we can go to if we need to? Because I know we talked a lot about intrinsic values.
There was you might remember in previous versions, we wrote, there was a short paragraph. We started out as a long paragraph and became a short paragraph, which is exactly as to actually say what we mean by these short things. So it does exist.
So if people want to.
No. And I think
we website, you can click through and see what's intended by each thing, for example. We may not ever get there, but it would be
something we could put on the on the website.
And there was another one on page 24, the wellbeing of Otago's communities now and in the future is at the heart of what we do. Again, that seems limiting our mandate only to the wellbeing of presumably human communities. There's also communities of galaxids and things that we're also responsible for, and I wondered that, again, that there's an underpinning something.
This is a direct relation to the Local Government Act, which gives us as a role the promotion of 4 well-being. So environmental well-being is part of it, as well as cultural, social, and economic well-being. So that's very much referring back to our role as a local government agency.
I just think that sometimes those well-beings in different communities, i.e. communities wider than human communities, will come into conflict. And I wonder how we manage those things from a strategic and values perspective. Step too far?
No, I'm just reflecting. We are working on, I guess, some indicators of well-being for Otago. So that sort of conversation might be able to be fleshed out in that context.
That sounds sensible. Yeah.
That's fair enough for now. I just wanted to raise those things. Thank you.
And we're also all thinking about that sort of broader, how do we understand those different well-beings and think about them together
and make decisions in precisely that context, because sometimes they're acting in opposition to one another.
Yeah, and that's what my concern is. But thank you, great piece of work.
Hey, reminder, Councillor Wilson, I'll come back to you, but Councillor Scott, Laws, Noon, Kelleher, Wilson. Scott.
Okay, so we've all got our comments on the vision. I'm actually following up after Forbes and Wilson in terms of the discussion around people and the ecology. And for example, one of the statements in here, the well-being of our Otago communities, it's just, let's talk about waterways, for example. Do we emphasise our obligations under, for example, Te Mana OTY? That is, where the health of the waterway is actually the first priority. So it's not sort of necessarily warm and fuzzy about relationships. There's actually a hierarchy that we're obliged to implement, basically on the premise that if we get the environment right, the people can then prosper.
And that's exactly right. When we
so if it's right, so no, why aren't I seeing it here?
What I'm meaning is that through our mission and through the discussions we had when drafting the mission, I think the idea was very much to highlight the fact that there's a synergy and a positive synergy between environment and people. And that's what we meant by positive relationship between environment, people, and place.
Yeah.
It's very much not putting them once against the other, but really trying to achieve both the well-being of people and the well-being of the environment at the same time.
Undoubtedly, but there is a hierarchy.
So that hierarchy only applies to RMA plans, and specifically water. And so this is everything that we, this is everything that we do, which is not, which is broader than that. So I think we just need to be careful. We're not trying to interpret NPS or policy statements in our strategic direction. This is about the organisation, what we do and where we want to head. If you can't link it, for sure, absolutely. But I think Sylvie's tried to just give an explanation how you might link it, but I don't think you want to do a direct interpretation of the NPS into this document. So that would be my advice.
Hey, Councillor Laws, you've been waiting a while. If you're there.
Thank you.
Oh, yep.
Thank you.
Hi.
So just to clarify, this is a sort of quasi-planning document for staff. So when they look at, in particular, and for us in general, is it right? Have I got that right?
I wouldn't call it a quasi-planning document.
What would you call it?
I would call it a strategic direction. It's a statement about the organisation. How it is used in a planning context, and it is a very useful document for a planning context for yourselves and staff in terms of setting those boundaries as to things that we may wish to do. Does it align with this strategic direction statement? And if it doesn't align, then we need to ask ourselves the question, should we be doing it, and is our strategic direction statement wrong? Or we shouldn't be doing it because it's not part of what we're proposing to deliver. So it is useful in a planning context because your plans will flow from it, but it is not a quasi-planning document.
Well, it is, but that's fine. So certainly after what you've just explained, because what you're saying now is that you're going to align staff advice to governments with this document. That is correct, isn't it?
No,
Thank you.
No, that's not correct. We provide the best advice for whatever topic of every time. This is a very common document that organisations have. It sets the direction for the organisation.
The thing that worries me though is that this is another question, is that it's static. So how can this evolve to deal with issues and ideas and trends and circumstances that we can't possibly have planned for today?
Yes, so as highlighted in the report, the strategic directions are going to be reviewed every 3 years before the LTP exercise, and it's exactly to be able to adapt it to any change in legislation or any new emerging trend or issues we might need to respond to and that we didn't know at the time. So it's not necessarily a full rewrite, but every 3 years we will be reassessing it to make sure that it's still fit for purpose.
So yeah, every 3 years, as of right, it will be reviewed. But let's say something dramatically occurs and we need to change our course. We could bring that to a meeting, couldn't we, and do that at any time as well. Thanks, Councillor Laws. Have you any other questions? Oh, yep, no, I thought so. Thank you.
There's a part that says, and I don't have the privilege of having the document that you've got in front of you, so I'm assuming that this is Appendix 2 of the agenda today. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
There's a part there under value addition that says effectively engage with our community. And I wonder if that word engage is slightly too creative or proactive. I'd like to be able to listen to what our communities are saying, and I do want the words to suggest that effectively engage and listen to our communities would probably be more substantive.
I think Kate just referred to previously the spectrum, the IOP2 spectrum. There is a spectrum of types of engagement you can do. Sometimes you are just listening, sometimes you are just telling, and it is appropriate to choose the type of engagement that's specific to the context in which you're engaging. So again, engage talks to a full spectrum of ways you might engage.
When I read that, I don't see the ORC listening, which has always been a problem. And finally, the last one is just on clean heating. What is clean heating? Because under air quality, because I've got the view that clean heating is that you're going to stop us in Central Otago as part of the strategic direction today. Burning combustible materials to keep us warm.
Well, I think first of all, we're not going to do anything to you. I think it's really important to understand that these strategic directions came from you.
No, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
I didn't put them.
I think we mean
there were three
rather than you,
There were three workshops that councillors attended. I'm not sure if you remember those, but
I attended them.
Yep, he did. Yep,
this is
part of it.
This is where they came from. So you've told us that you want us with partners to promote and enable clean heating and support warm and energy efficient homes. How we do that is not yet decided because we have an air strategy to make and we have a regional plan to put together that deals with air quality. And as you know, you make the decisions around our policy direction. So,
okay, but one of those decisions is today.
Yeah.
And there is a strategic document there that we're being asked to support, which I won't read, because it in actual fact sets policy. There's been no engagement with potential Otago or Lakes communities or any community in Otago around this, but there you are. You're putting it into a document, and we've just been told that it will guide the ORC for the next 3 years.
Just to go back to the meeting,
We have an air quality strategy which is due to be reviewed. This strategy was developed in 2018 and there was public consultation on it. And it does refer to clean heating as being using clean or using,
not burning wood.
Using low emission or ultra low emission clean heating appliances in an appropriate way. And that's basically how it was defined. It is also, to some extent, defined in the NES for air quality, which sets some standards on types of food burners which are allowed in New Zealand. So it's not quite true that it's just been here as, without any proper thought. There are some existing strategies. It's also relied on existing strategies and planning documents. So clean heating is defined in other documents. It's not defined in this one because it gives us some discretion on rethinking about what's appropriate in Otago to achieve good air quality, good and healthy air quality.
It says promote and enable. Promote and enable clean heating.
Clean surely means that you're not going to be burning combustible materials, and it doesn't care whether it's coal or wood.
Doesn't actually say that, and as Sylvie said, I guess the building code says a certain standard for new wood burners, and whether you define that as clean or not.
It's not clean. It's clearly obviously not clean according to the.
Okay, well, that's you defining that. But hey, what I'm going to bring you back to is what we're doing here, which is exactly as you pointed out, we're adopting the ORC's strategic directions, and as you have suggested, that isn't one that you're happy with. So there's always options available to you now to refine that particular point rather than to oppose the entire strategic direction to. So I'm just saying that to you. Absolutely now is the time to say that you don't agree with certain things. Yep.
Well, I mean, I don't agree with them at all, but I'll do that, I guess, after the questions.
Got that, Paul, yeah. Thank you. Okay, any other questions?
I was just going to clarify for Councillor Laws, paragraph 9 of the report does mention that we did undertake community consultation on the strategic directions. So just in regards to your concern about setting policy without talking to the community, there was actually consultation.
Thanks.
There was no
Okay.
consultation from my community.
Okay. Right, Councillor Noon, we've come to you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Firstly, thanks, Anne and Selby, to get to this point. The way I see this document is it's like the helicopter view. It encompasses all our beliefs and values and aspirations, and it's a decision-making framework that pretty much impacts on every decision we make, and I would expect to see commentary in every paper that we receive around what does this mean if we make this decision, and does it align with the strategic directions and that sort of thing. So look, great that we're at this point. I only had one question, and it relates to the updated, obviously, version of the strategic directions, and it's on page 28 of Diligent, and it's under healthy water, soil and coast, and it's the first bullet point, it's actually second bullet point. It just says promote and enable, and then it goes to best practice land management, and the language that is being used now is sort of sustainable land management. Best practice isn't good enough anymore, if you know what I mean. I'm not going to die in the ditch, Sylvia, if it's not in there, but I just felt I needed to express that here because I think we've stepped up in that regard, and once again it's just raising the bar that little bit. So thank you.
Point, thank you. Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you. Sorry, the way I view this document, just like any corporate or governance structure would, the strategic direction, you have to have it. And in any board or any governance structure, one of the first questions you'd ask from a new director or whatever is, what's your strategic direction? So look, it's arriving at where we generally tend to arrive at, I would have thought. If I was putting on my lens for any ratepayer anywhere in Otago at the moment, and I was looking through this and I was saying, yep, right, yep, right, yep, right, and I get down to our commitments and I was all right, through all those, the one that resonates with me most is focusing on customer needs. And yet I would look at that and it's right at the bottom. And I would think, well, when you look at some of the others, surely the ratepayers as the customers need to be a little higher in the priority list. And I know I'll be told this isn't a priority, it's just a list, and it's great to have customer needs there, but the ratepayers who will receive this will see it and see that they are at the bottom. And I guess that's the one comment I'd like to make, is that I would hope that the ratepayers are a little higher up in the list for how we'll engage or act with them. Thank you.
See people taking notes on that. Thanks for that, and some people agreeing with that. Thanks. I guess that's a call for us. Yeah. Great. Councillor Wilson, sorry.
Sorry, and I should have raised this earlier, and it's probably my most substantial question, and I'm sorry, I'm sure I've raised it and lost this debate, but I will do it again. While I appreciate we may not want to lead, I do find it very sad that under climate change we do not use the word mitigate as the first action. And considering we run a public transport and we're meant to be slightly concerned about offering something that may mitigate 43% of our carbon emissions in Otago, it would be great that we were looking at mitigation as a action under climate change. Is there any way of putting that in there? Because that should always be the first step before adapting.
Agreed.
Eva, and to respond to that, I'm a climate change person, so.
We're actually trying to promote a more holistic approach, actually encompassing both adaptation and mitigation, rather than always continuing to separate them.
Doesn't enable meeting New Zealand's emission targets talk about?
Yes.
Talk about what you're talking about?
Well, it can. We can be part of that, but it's the first. The problem is adapting means that we've given up mitigating, and in my mind, mitigation is what we should be doing first. And maybe we need to say enable meeting New Zealand's emission targets. That doesn't actually default us from as first. That should be above adaptation. I agree on that. But I'm not sure that focuses us as the transport provider on mitigation and coming up with solutions to do that. I'm just...
No.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Just one if I can add something in there, because we've separated out the transport, which is second, to collaborate with partner. It doesn't acknowledge, apart from promoting transition away, it doesn't acknowledge the ability of really good transport investment in mitigation as an effective response. So I think I was disappointed with that too. I realised that we kind of really got to, but I would love to see mitigation lead a regional approach to climate change.
And that comes down, in my mind, it's that if we lead it, we'll be part of a transport management approach and Dunedin to how staff get to work at that level. We help lead transport change. It doesn't just have to be our buses, but I'm not prepared to sit here elected by, I hope, some young people who've got some aspirations that we're only going to help them adapt. And if we don't have the word mitigate in there, I think it sounds like we've given up on them. And I'm sorry, I think that's an unfair. I think they expect to see us mitigate.
I think this discussion is an example of the fact that this is actually the area in this whole document which has actually changed most actively in terms of where people are coming from in this room. Because when we started, we were really the conversation was only about adaptation, and we weren't going to put our toe into the mitigation area. So it really reflects a change in the actual situation externally and also in this room. And I think what you're actually articulating is that what you're seeing actually doesn't reflect where you are now, because, maybe 18 months ago when we started this process, it was slightly different.
Yeah, I think I acknowledge that I may well have lost this debate in the past. I am not, however, going to stop fighting it.
Yeah, I guess as I said to Michael Laws, now is the time for adopting. So, yeah, it's over to us. Yeah, thank you. Okay, are there any other questions, or are we going to move some motions.
I'll move it to get it off the.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. Moved Councillor Calvert, seconded Councillor Forbes. We have the recommended motion, which is to adopt as it is.
Can I foreshadow, can I ask whether we can put in to the mover, a clause that reflects mitigation as well as adaptation? And I'm going to leave it to the staff. I don't want to actually reword it, but to that extent that it encompasses that. Is she happy to include that?
Sometimes something.
So where would you put it? Under the effective response to climate change, and it's somewhere in there that we would mitigate as well. And it may be under enable meeting New Zealand's emission targets, but that we would mitigate as well as adapt. Are you happy with that?
Sounds harmless enough.
Thank you.
I'm happy as seconded.
Thank you.
So we have one.
Did that give you clear enough direction without us with the topic?
I'm happy to listen to if Councillor Laws has something he'd like to say about something.
Can I suggest we take, Madam Chair, each section by section?
No, we've got a mover and a seconder already for the whole thing. So I'm
then you
thinking
make
that
it impossible to separate out section which can be amended from those bits.
No, we've got already that the mover and the seconder are happy to address Kate's. I'm just trying to iron out how we'll do that. It's a separate motion, really, rather than an amendment. And then there's your one as well around clean heat, I think, that you've signalled. And then there's the Te Mana o Te Wai potentially as well that Brian's signalled. Councillor Kelleher's on customer.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah. That's why I was suggesting that you take it section by section.
That's going to take all afternoon, I think, going through potentially.
Is this an important document or not?
We have a mover and a seconder for the whole thing. How do I do the? Put it?
Just put it.
Yeah, put it. Yep. Mover and a seconder then.
Have we got Kate's?
You said you would include.
Yeah.
You've agreed to Kate's, which is then to
Include the word mitigation in the section on climate change.
Yeah, thank you.
Appropriately approve the word.
I'm imagining it's an option, not necessarily given
strategic
primacy, but given along with. That's what I'm imagining.
Adopt RC strategic directions in Appendix 1, and then a 2, is it? It's following on from 1, I think, with a amendment. Oh no, it's an addition.
With the following additions, then you can add A, B, and C. So mine would be A, the reference to mitigation under climate change, and how that's wordsmithed will leave to the staff. It doesn't exclude anything that's already in there. And then B, I don't know if you've asked about your customers one yet or not.
Yes, well, I'd like it there.
Customer needs to be
further up the list.
Shifted up the list.
Make them alphabetical, and then it will come under C. If they're all equal.
Be C on the list.
Put the people first.
Oh, okay. Customer focus.
And
then you can ask Michael Lewis if he wants to.
Brian, you mentioned it.
I was hoping that inviting Edward if he wanted to say anything about the Te Mana o Te Wai.
Welcome to.
Well, thanks, Madam Chair. Te Mana o Te Wai is related to the water, of course, and it's becomes a priority because it's the source of all life. But I see the strategy as broader than that. And Te Mana o Te Wai is iterative. It's actually not, it probably doesn't quite address the ecosystems or the fish that live in the water. So it's all, I wouldn't use that as the be all and end all. I think take a wider view. I go back to our own sayings, and we've got several sayings which guides our thinking around these things. Toi tū te whenua, toi tū te marae, toi tū te iwi. So the land comes first, the culture second, and the people third. That's one aspect. But also, he haha te mea nui te ao, he takata, he takata, he takata. So we say also that people are the most important thing. So I don't see a contradiction with the way it's there. I think that takes the wider and embracing view, which I think Gwyneth talked to, which I entirely agree with.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the other one was the clean heat one, but Councillor Laws hasn't specifically asked for that one yet.
Can we speak in relation to that, Madam Chair?
No, because Councillor Laws hasn't said it, so no one's asked for it.
Hasn't said what?
At the moment, we're asking the mover and the seconder of the adopting in entirety whether they are happy with reference to mitigation for climate change, shifting the customer focus up the list, Te Mana o Te Wai no, and then potentially your clean heat.
Yeah, I'm just suggesting that we remove the word clean because I'll speak to that issue if you want me to.
Off you go.
I'm looking at a report that was compiled by various regional councils in New Zealand. I note that there were 3 Otago regional council staff who were involved in the compilation of that report, and it relates to air quality in New Zealand. The definition of clean heating is very clearly that there should be no wood burners nor wood pellet burners anywhere in air sheds where there is a significant air quality problem. So that's why I am saying, without us debating that around this council table, this document would seem to suggest that air sheds like Cromwell, and also all air sheds in Central Otago where it's cold in winter and the price of electricity is so exorbitant that almost only the rich can afford it, that combustible burning of properties to keep warm is going to be voided by the strategy document. And I'm pretty sure we haven't had that argument around here. I know exactly what clean heating means, and I've looked at the definition of it in government documents that have come out subsequent to this conversation.
Just wondering though if the words promote and enable clean heating are quite different from excluding specific things.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, no. If you
so anyway, yep. You're saying no, so that's okay. Yep.
Would you be happy, Councillor Laws, with the idea of having cleaner, which gives a sense of direction rather than a...
Yeah, I'd buy that.
Are you happy to do it?
That's exactly the next thing I'm going to ask is whether the mover and the seconder are happy with all of those. We've got, you know what they are. Reference to mitigation, customers up the list, and now we've got cleaner heat. All of those are happier?
I can live with it.
You okay?
Yep.
So the mover and the seconder are happy with those. So adopting, and then we have A, B and C, which have been captured. You all know what those are.
Madam Chair.
Sorry?
I don't want to be a pain, but the word mitigation is being used in a whole lot of different contexts in this conversation, and we're going to apparently insert it into the climate change section, and I don't know where, and I don't know what it means in that context. do you simply mean reduce emissions?
Yes.
Well, why not say that rather than mitigation?
This mitigating could be offsetting, could it?
Oh, it can be, yeah.
Yeah.
It can be.
Well,
Yes,
no.
Of course it can be, sorry. Mitigating can be.
Yeah. Well, that's
It reduces your anything.
what you don't want, isn't it?
So it is about reduce.
Cool.
Let's say that.
Would you be happy to have reduced emissions, Councillor Wilson?
Well, mitigating is more about changing behaviour and things like that too.
There's a whole lot to mitigation which I think the general public generally understand, whereas reduces.
Well, apparently
they don't.
Apparently they don't. And if mitigation includes just buying carbon credits, it's a...
No, I don't think it does.
No, it's the action of reducing the severity, seriousness or painfulness of something. And so to mitigate climate change is taking actions to reduce that severity and seriousness.
What would Councillor Deaker like to see in there?
Reduce.
Avoid and reduce.
Yeah.
No, not avoid. Avoid's got a legal meaning at the moment.
There's no question.
Okay, now I've got trouble.
You put this to us, so it's up to you what you...
Emissions does not do the same thing, reducing it.
I'm happy if reference to
targets.
mitigation actions, and I don't care that the word, it's not the word, it's reference to the mitigation actions under climate change. And I'm happy for the staff, they've heard the debate, and I'm happy for them to finish wordsmithing it. I'm not going to say the words in quotation marks mitigation. But are the staff happy to, having heard the discussion, to be able to wordsmith that? I just want to give a direction we're going in, if that's okay with you.
Suggestion.
Councillor Malcolm.
Just, you've got there, I thought it was covered by enabling meeting New Zealand's emission targets, but you could add to that by mitigation and reduction. Would that do that?
So, yeah,
I think that's the type of thing we were been discussing here. We just haven't come up with the exact words.
We just put it in there where it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Some people may
Councillor Hobbs.
My problem with the cleaner one, the cleaner,
Yeah.
it's called cleaner air, is cleaner heating, cleaner than what? I'm sorry. When you put a comparative in, that could be a very low bar.
It's the status quo. It's the status quo.
That's a very low bar.
Well, that's what it is.
Because the mover and the seconder seem to be happy with the additions, we'll take them one by one, I think.
I think
Yeah.
A needs addition of, reference to, and change the wording in wherever, which makes it clearer. And maybe customer needs to be moved up the list on whatever it is. So it's referring to each area that these appear in. Moved up the list, which is of commitments.
Yeah.
And change the word into cleaner in, where is it?
good air quality.
All those things relate to focus.
Right, and enable.
And the reference to good air quality.
Even if you didn't have it there, you're actually doing that. That's right. Change the wording.
And the reference to.
Yeah, so it currently says, with our partners, promote and enable clean heating.
Yeah.
So it'll be cleaner heating.
Yeah. Cleaner heating in the reference to good air quality.
Hey, we're getting there, I think.
Are we going to take them separately?
Yes, well, we will. Mover and seconder are happy with all of those. So that's the first hurdle. Then it enables us, I think, to take these separately.
Reference to good air quality.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll take the first one then, which is simply, does it need to then be
subject to the following?
Yeah, subject to the following.
Yes. You need to do A, B, C. And then
Actually, that's true. We'll do A, B, C, won't we? And then we'll come back to the first one. Good idea. So, number one then, request the following additions. A is addition of reference to mitigation and reduction under climate change.
So request, is that right?
I don't know. Is that the right word?
No, it's not request.
It's really, isn't it, adopts the strategic directions subject to the following alterations? 1, 2, 3.
Making the following additions.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's okay. Adopts the following additions.
Adopts the ORC strategic directions in Appendix 1, subject to the following amendments. Struggling for a word.
It's because of extra following.
And you take away the first following, since it hasn't got anything here. Excellent. And then you don't need the second one.
Might as well take the way
Well, then I will have to vote.
I thought we did too, because I thought we were going to do the first and then come back to.
Yes,
But you can,
yeah.
I think we can take them separately though.
Yes, that's right. But
we can
I
take
thought it was adopts ORC strategic directions in 1, makes the following.
Yeah, but you can't then, once you've adopted it, you can't.
No, but adopting's going to be the last thing once we have done all of those small changes.
Yes. Can't we just vote for them A and then B
That's what
and then
we're
C?
going to do, yes.
Leaving the first line, no.
Yep.
Just adopts the following amendments.
Yes, okay, that's great. A, addition of reference of mitigation and reduction under climate change. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. B, customer needs to be moved up the list of commitments. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. C, change the wording to cleaner rather than clean in the reference to good air quality. All in favour? Against? Against. Okay, we'll need a division on that one.
So the third one, sorry. What's that?
That top one actually needs to reference the strategic directions or what it's the following amendments to.
Yeah, we can tidy that up.
Councillor Calvert.
Yes.
Dr. Carter.
And
Did you not?
it's about cleaner, it's about air quality.
Yep. No, I followed the argument.
Okay.
Councillor Deacon.
No.
Mr. Allison. Councillor Forbes.
No.
Councillor Hobbs.
No.
Councillor Hope.
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Gallagher.
Yes.
Councillor Laws.
Yes.
Councillor Malcolm.
No.
Councillor Noon.
Aye.
Councillor Robertson.
No.
Councillor Scott.
No.
And Councillor Wilson.
Yes.
Okay.
7, 4. 1, 2, 3. 7 again.
Can I just ask, can this meeting adopt this strategy or does the council have to adopt it?
It's got to go to council.
Well, in that case, we're not adopting the strategy.
How it works. You can adopt today. You can adopt today, and then council ratifies that decision.
We've had this debate before, yeah.
Not loving it.
This one, yeah. Yeah.
It's the way it works for every committee?
No, we recommend.
No, I think, yeah.
Madam Chair, do you have the casting vote?
I do have a casting vote. I could use
What's
it.
that?
The other option is drawing straws or something. I think I'm going to just use the casting vote on this one.
Madam Chair, point of order. Point of order, Madam Chair.
Point of order, yes.
Can I suggest that given the vote, that this be recommended to council for the final decision?
I think we've got an opinion.
It's going to go to council anyway to be confirmed. So
Amanda's got something to say.
I think just to say that it's within the terms of reference of the Strategy and Planning Committee to review the strategic plan and recommend updates, monitor and report performance. So, but this committee adopts, and then, as is the case with all of our committee adoptions and decisions, they then go to council. That's why you adopt the committee decisions at each council meeting. At the end of the agenda
says recommend.
No, this committee can adopt.
This committee adopts.
That's fine,
not what you just said.
Council
Yep. Yes, that's right. I'm going to use my casting vote just to move this forward. We are debating clean versus cleaner. So, yeah. And in this instance, the amendment C is lost then. I vote against, continue to vote against cleaner. Okay, on to
Don't we have two chairmen from this committee?
I'm not chairing this meeting. Not today.
Yeah.
Good try.
Moving along then back to the first one, which is adopting overall. All in favour?
Aye.
Against?
No.
Carried.
And have it noted, please.
Great, thank you. Councillor Laws against and noted. Right, just looking at the agenda for this meeting, we have advertised that the second half of this meeting is at 1 o'clock. I think we should go through till 12:30, have a half-hour lunch rather than breaking now, and that gives us a bit more time for workshopping. So we'll move on to the next paper. We have Cozy Homes Trust Annual Report.
And Sarah and Jeremy are coming in on Zoom.
Oh, great. Yep. Just waiting for Jeremy Baker and Sarah Harrison to join us on Zoom for this one. Oh, hi, Jeremy. I can see that you're there. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou. Thanks for having me.
Just waiting for Sarah to join us as well, Jeremy, and we'll get underway. So thanks for joining us today.
Sarah Harrison should be there.
Oh, she's here?
Yep,
Great, okay.
We just can't see her. She should be able to hear.
So we've read the report and wonder, Jeremy, would you like to add anything or speak to it at all?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to talk today. I don't really have anything to add. I'd just like to say, again, thanks for the opportunity to work with you over the past 3 years in implementing your air quality strategy. As you know, we were disappointed by council's decision to not continue implementation of that plan. And we urge you to do so again at the earliest opportunity. Other than that, I'm happy to take the report as read and just answer any questions.
Yep. Sarah, you're with us as well, and you've written the report today. Anything you would like to note?
Oh, thank you. No, I don't have anything to note.
Okay. there for noting. So anybody like to ask any questions at this point or comment? Councillor Noon, are you moving or?
I will in a minute, but I'll make
Okay,
a comment when
sure.
appropriate. Maybe go to questions first and I'll come.
Any questions?
I'll second it.
Am I allowed to make a
I've got a question.
comment? Okay, well, the comment quite simply is, I'd just like to thank Cozy Homes for the 49 clean heat, clean air subsidies for the 125 households across the Otago with grants for clean heating appliances, and the over 680 households in Otago installation grants. You're chipping away at it. That's great. I'm hoping the ORC will get back on board in terms of a focus on air as per our LTP in a number of years' time. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Laws, I think you said you had a question. Councillor Hobbs, after you.
Yes, we've got a Cozy. Sorry, I can't see. But do we have a Cozy Homes representative with us? Do we?
Yes, we have Jeremy Baker with us on Zoom as well.
Jeremy, it's Michael Laws here. How are you?
Good, thank you, Councillor Laws.
The reasons for the removal of ORC's funding, was that explained to you, and what was your reaction to that?
I would say that I was informed that it was happening. I wouldn't say the reasons were explained to me in a wholesome way, and I was extremely disappointed to learn that the program, the Clean Heat, Clean Air grant in particular, was being suspended because, as ORC had acknowledged in its earlier air quality, that financial assistance is critical to making improvement in air quality in the Airshed 1 and 2 towns.
Suggestion that you weren't doing your job properly, because that usually is the reason why a contract's withdrawn.
I don't think these are fair questions for
They're not
today.
your questions to ask, they're mine, and I am asking it.
We do need to ask them on the paper as well, so yeah.
We have a representative of the Cozy Homes Trust here. They have had funding removed by the ORC. It is a fair and legitimate question to ask of them what their reaction is to that.
The paper has been written by an ORC staff member today. Thank you. Go on.
So what?
I just want to clarify. There's a couple of funding things that are being talked about and perhaps being conflated. So there was a subsidy where a fund had been set aside, and all funds were used, and there was no decision to increase the amount in that reserve. The second funding that this report specifically relates to is an agreement for 3 years to support the Cozy Homes Trust, $45,000 per annum, and that contract has come to an end, and this is the final report as a result of that 3-year contract. So
which, Madam Chair, is exactly the reason why I'm asking the person who has been running this program and is currently in charge of it, the reaction to the cessation of funding by the ORC for a program that seemed to be working.
Councillor Noon would like to answer at this point as well as our trustee as well. Yeah, recently elected.
Hey, g'day, Michael. Hey, look, it's really important to remember that the fundamental reason why we haven't decided about future funding of Cozy Homes is that we need to get our own house in order first. And one of the things that we are required to do is review our air plan, which is, my understanding, is overdue to be reviewed. And also, we're looking at developing an air strategy once the plan has been reviewed and adopted, and then a strategy on top of that and an implementation plan as well, which will follow on from the strategy development. So I think it's important to remember we need to get our house in order first. So we've got a clear high-level policy statement and strategy and implementation plan that will help drive improvement in air quality around around Otago where the hotspots are. And essentially that's where the Cozy Homes Trust has focused in over the last 3-year period. And I just want to make a couple of comments about the Cozy Home Trust. I'm obviously the representative on the Cozy Homes Trust. I attended my first meeting around about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was really good to have get an understanding around what Cozy Homes Trusts have been up to, and a lot of it is covered off in this report, but also the challenges they've got going forward. And the two things I picked up in that first meeting was the collaborative approach that Cozy Homes Trust take, and also the leverage of which they're securing funding to help the small amount or relatively modest amount that has come from the ORC over the last 3 years, but also getting a large bang for their bucks by using that as leverage and obviously tapping into whether it's central government funding, community trust funding, et cetera, et cetera. So the trust, in my view, have done a really good job with a really modest amount of money, but as I say, getting really good value from what we contribute to the trust. So I look forward to once we've I suppose reviewed those policy documents I've referred to, so then we will be able to make decisions about further support in the future, as Brian's already alluded to.
Councillor Hobbs.
Yep, I just want to ask a question of Jeremy or of whomever. Sorry, it's our person on there. Dunedin is hilly, and one of the problems I've dealt with on several occasions have been a house lower down emitting strong fumes. Okay, with sometimes judged by ORC to not be exceeding the limit, but they go straight in the window of the house that's further up the hill in certain wind conditions. Is that something you ever struck? Because it's really offensive for the person upwind.
I think this is probably an ORC compliance type of issue. Probably not so much on this paper as well, but, but no, that's okay. Richard, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, you're right, Marion. We do come across those from time to time, and it's difficult under the current air plan for our enforcement officers who have to make a call on what they strike on any site that they're visiting. So the noxious, offensive, objectionable clause that's in the current air plan is what they use.
Because on one occasion there was a new appliance put in to the offending house.
So that would be where there's a different rule around the type of appliance separate to that general rule around discharging over the boundary. So the houses that sit above effectively at eye level to the neighbouring chimney is difficult, and there's no perfect answer for it. Yeah.
Sorry, thank you.
It's okay. Any other questions? Councillor Malcolm.
Jerry, listen, really good, and you are chipping away, but how does the 680 insulated compare with other years? And on the total uninsulated, have we got an idea of the total uninsulated stock in Otago and how we are going in getting that sorted?
Thank you, Councillor Malcolm. To answer your first question, sorry, there's a bit of feedback. I'm assuming you guys can hear me okay. But To answer your first question, the 680 was down slightly from before, but we've been averaging around 700 homes per year insulated over the Winter Kiwi Homes program over the last 3 years. And we anticipate similar levels this year and next year as the program is now funded through June 2023. In terms of, sorry, I've lost, what was the second part of your question?
Oh, yeah, just how are we looking at target stocks? Yeah, at target stocks, how many still to be insulated?
So, you know, information on homes that have been privately done is hard to come by. I don't really have that. But what I can tell you is that out of the 50,000 odd private owner-occupied dwellings in Otago, about 16,000 have received some form of government-subsidized insulation, and so that leaves you know, a net of about 34,000 that have not benefited from a subsidized insulation region.
And that would include all the new houses, of course, that would have had to have it done anyway.
Yeah, well, that's right. I don't think that's
And
accounted
the 50, yeah. Yeah. So, and sorry, just one other question. On page 37, you spoke at and promoted Cozy Homes Trust in social interagency meetings in Alexandra, Cromwell and Wanaka. What's happening in the Waitaki?
I'm actually very active in the Waitaki. I work very closely with the Safer Waitaki, I guess now Stronger Waitaki group, and a number of nonprofits there. I guess just for purposes of this report, I was more focused on the work done pursuant to the ORC air quality funding, which did not include a focus on Waitaki, but the Cozy Homes Trust generally is very active in Waitaki, and I would note that last year, per capita, the Waitaki district had the highest uptake of our insulation and heating grants. There's a huge need there, and there's also a high number of low-income homeowners which can benefit from that.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'm aware of that, and I just wanted you a chance to let everyone know that. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Sorry. Sorry, Mr. Ellison.
Kia ora, thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora, Jeremy. There's been initiatives around home insulation for some time, and some of those earlier standards may not now be up to scratch. Are you having to redo houses that have all previously been had that home insulation support?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have data on exactly what number of houses have had to be redone. I would say you're right that the program has been around in one form or another for quite a number of years now. It is true that if you have existing insulation, you can get it upgraded to the current standard under the program. But yeah, by and large, you know, we're dealing with houses that are completely uninsulated or have very minimal insulation from say the 70s or something like that.
Thanks. Jeremy, I think it's fair probably that I reflect back the words of Councillor Noon in terms of the impressive efforts that you've put in with a relatively small budget, as we've described. You've done some fantastic work, really good strategic direction. There was some comment that you guys haven't been doing your job properly, but I can see that from the annual report that actually you've been working extremely hard and making a real difference. I wondered if you want to take the opportunity to just touch on, it's your annual report, some of the things that you've been proud of over the last year potentially and some of the actions that have happened.
Thank you very much. Take that opportunity. These were noted in the report, but I think the first one, the most relevant to this was the introduction of top-up grants for heating. So we have the governmental mechanisms funding, and we have been topping up insulation grants for a number of years, but never heating. So we worked with our funders the Otago Community Trust and Central Lakes Trust to introduce additional funding for heating for the first time. And another initiative that was new this year was in Central Otago, again, working with the Central Lakes Trust. What they found is they had set aside a chunk of money to top up these Warmer Kiwi Homes grants, but those are really only for the lowest income homeowners. And they were finding that there wasn't many people that were actually eligible in their district. And so we developed a new program with a broader eligibility criteria that offers a 70% installation subsidy for homeowners in sort of middle income areas. And we're working with another funder to hopefully bring that across the region this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Okay. Anyone else before we put the recommendation then? No. We're noting in this instance. So everyone we need a mover and a seconder. Mover is Councillor Malcolm, seconder Councillor Noon. All in favour?
Aye.
Against?
Thanks, Jeremy.
Carried. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us, Jeremy. We are going, thank you. The next paper then, I think we probably will need to come back to it. We will adjourn at this point for lunch and we will come back at 1 o'clock. Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Hopefully lunch is there.
Yes, it is.
Enough people, yep.
We'll leave it out of here now.
Okay, we're going live. Yep. Okay. Recording is in progress. We are reopening the meeting of Strategy and Planning for today, and we're up. Sorry, Di.
Online.
Sure. Welcome back. Michael and Lynn and Yang, I think, has joined us as well. Hi, everyone. We're here to talk about the Otago Greenhouse Gas Profile Update paper, which has been prepared by Dr. Duncan and Dr. Yang, who are both with us. Brilliant. So yeah, maybe if you'd like to introduce where it's come from, but councillors have the paper and most likely have read all of that. Thank you.
Is that working? Yeah. At the Data and Information Committee meeting in relation to the greenhouse gas inventory report, there were a number of questions which people had, which the paper has attempted to address. And we can take any questions on that, but the other key thing in the paper was the report of the, we presented the greenhouse gas profile to the mayoral forum recently, and it was quite very positively received, and we are now going to, we basically have a mandate for some regional collaboration on climate change, taking account of also district level activities and directions as well, which is very positive, and we are continuing to work forward with an officer level group in terms of the greenhouse gas inventory and taking that forward as well. So apart from that, really, any questions or anything that you didn't understand in terms of the answers to the previous questions?
Councillor Calvert, then Scott.
I had a couple of questions. I understand, and I could have got this completely wrong, but that the 5 metre tree rule is not the international rule. It is our chosen.
It is.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay, because I read somewhere that we could have chosen that or a higher one, and we chose 5. Is that right?
No, it's the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Yep.
Excellent. And
sorry, Anne wants to answer that one too. Thanks, Hilary.
Yes, so the United Nations Framework for Climate Change has a rule, a definition for forestry, and my understanding is that that's a range between 2 to 5, and the MFE adopted 5. So the wording in the UNFCCC is that a forestry is a minimum area of a land of 0.05 to 1 hectares with tree crown cover or equivalent stocking level of more than 10 to 30% with trees with the potential to reach a minimum height of 2 to 5 meters at maturity. So that is the first half of the definition of a forestry. And MFE adopted the definition and chosen 5 meters as New Zealand's definition for forestry.
Yes, so when I say we chose that, we did choose that.
We chose
within the
5
range.
when we could have chosen any from 2 to 5.
Yes.
We're just within New Zealand policy.
Oh, no, not when I say we, I mean New Zealand.
Oh.
And the significance of that is, together with the information that is available about tussocks and things, and there's 2 areas that we sort of around this table have concerns about. One of them was carbon farming and one of them was tussocks. And we, one of the things I guess we could do is lobby in some ways central government to change its position if there's a position that could be changed. I'm not saying we should, I'm just saying that if we have made a choice, like 5 when it could be 2, we could try and get central government to change that. We could put in front of central government the things about tussocks and I've sent people round things from Dr. Prof. Marks about tussocks, and likewise the rules about carbon forestry as to whether there's an appetite somewhere to make any attempt at lobbying central government about some of the things that they have chosen in the middle of here. So really that's what this is really good to know what is, and the question is, would we be trying to achieve something that isn't what is current government policy?
Are we trying to achieve something that isn't government policy?
Yep. I'm assuming who was actually directing that to you as governors, not as us as staff.
Okay.
No, it wasn't a question.
Yeah. Okay, I have
not a question for staff,
here.
but was a question because we asked for this paper, and that's what it's thrown up for me.
Okay, we've got Councillor Scott, Laws, Malcolm, Wilson, Forbes. It's Councillor Scott.
It seemed to me the report reaffirmed the status quo in terms of our last meeting. You know, for example, you've simply explained regarding the 5 metres, you've explained about the tussock, but actually there's not sufficient information to actually change. And going back to Hillary's point, yeah, it's one thing to go to central government and say we could have done it too. We'd firstly need to clearly understand why they came up with 5 metres. My perception of it is as one that, you know, I planted various plantings and so forth, is that they want significant chunks of mass to justify the mass, I suspect.
Might be a comment rather than a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or okay, so what is the justification for the 5 metres to respond to Hillary's comment?
I'm not sure that we're MFE. We could try and, I don't know, we could try and find the right MFE advice but yeah, I don't think us as staff can comment on the MFE decision.
Well, fair enough. Staff have written the report.
Okay, that's the answer, not sure.
I can speculate as a forester that the amount of biomass that you would expect between 2 and 5 metres would be minimal and therefore not material in terms of the amount of accounting or reporting for emissions. And in terms of the ability to map and understand what is in that mapping.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Laws.
Yeah, my understanding was that in the draft report of the Climate Change Commission, they wanted to revisit this issue. And sometimes I think regional councils, including ourselves, fall into the trap of accepting silliness when we really should be pushing back. And this is one of those issues. Right now, the government's policy is such, and I don't know, you can blame the politicians for it. Clearly, they're just simply following a protocol somewhere, is that really only Pinus radiata forests are of any real value in terms of sequestering carbon. And so that also militates not just against orchards and vineyards and the native tussocks of Otago, but it also militates against growing natives, against exotics, because Pinus radiata stores more carbon than do native trees.
Grows quicker.
And so, exactly, and it grows quicker. And it's also not deciduous, which is another aspect of this. So I think that we have a responsibility to push back against this and say, you need to revisit this issue. And we would be in very good company. As I said, the Climate Change Commission in their draft report said, do you know what? You're going to end up with just Pinus radiata plantations all throughout New Zealand as your solution. And that really isn't a solution. So I just want to float with my colleagues that we need to take this a bit higher.
Thanks. Councillor Malcolm.
Oh, yeah, look, my understanding of the 5 metre is that actually has been revisited, and for the South Island it has the potential to grow to 5 metres because all our manuka stocks, and it's right down wet Southland, but a lot of areas that native will not grow to 5 metres. So, but the breed has the potential to. So that is my latest understanding of it. I am really concerned about the tussock. And I wonder what is the program, or do you know of the program as to when it is going to be evaluated and correctly assessed? Because there are large tracts of land that have been shut up throughout New Zealand for environmental gains, and it would be, I thought that would be being monitored and being assessed. But if it's not, when do we know when that is going to happen?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to your question.
Right. And probably leading, and the other side of that again is the shelter belt rule, that a shelter belt's got to be 30 metres wide to be part of the equation. Where people have done exceptionally good jobs planting shelter belts for animal health, but also for soil protection and the environmental gains are not being considered when. There's a fence that goes from Shag Point to the Waitaki River in a straight line, and that was almost planted out many years ago. So something of that length could, be a huge amount of trees, but would never be considered. And if we look at a lot of the stations up, which is not our area, I suppose, Birchwood Station and the likes, and beside that, Ribbonwood, were all huge shelter belt areas for good environmental gains, but now they don't count. So is there any work being done to re-establish the potential of shelter belts?
Well, as it obviously is being looked at, I don't know where that is at the moment. But the impression that I've got from material on that is that while certainly at a national scale, those it's still very small in comparison to in terms of materiality to a reporting or accounting process. And the other important thing in relation to tussocks is that they're not currently included in our greenhouse gas profile anyway, because of the framework we use, which is the GPC. So we can talk about
this.
I
understand that. Yeah. But I suppose when you talk materiality though on every 100 to 150 hectare property in North Otago, if everyone's planting shelter belts of significance for their bit on climate change, that it's actually not getting. That's where it's the collective becomes the just.
Local.
Well, yeah, that's.
And it might be something that could be explored further through farm plans.
Yeah, it has been.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, but it's still got to be recognised, isn't it?
Yeah.
Councillor Wilson.
Well, thank you. I happen to have the Beef and Lamb farm plan here today, and just reading the section on climate change. It's interesting. What we're dealing with in this report, I think, is dealing with the emissions trading and the things that tick off that. But because agriculture is outside of that at the moment, in the farm plans, my understanding is, having read this, and I'm more than happy to copy it, is that you can count all of your other things like shelter belts, and even I think vineyards potentially, but I'm not quite sure about the size. These are for sheep and beef and deer farmers, that you can start counting them as an offset against your carbon emissions. So it is provided for in that context, because at the moment we're outside of the emissions trading. That makes sense?
Yep.
And so it's the emissions trading that has the 30 metre, the 5 metre height and the 1 hectare rule, but not on farm. So it's the two different work streams really.
Yeah.
But I agree with Hilary, and I just and what Michael Laws was saying. I think the opportunity for getting native regeneration in Otago, especially and retaining tussocks, does need to make sure that we have to check what MFE have suggested, because I think we've seen examples of there being a risk for conversions onto relatively cheap land, because of the chasing the Pinus radiata, which I don't think is necessarily the net biodiversity gain that we could be going for.
Yeah.
Sorry, more a statement. I'm more than happy to move when it's ready.
Sure. Councillor Forbes, then Hobbs, I think. No, you're okay. Yep.
I just wanted to ask, paragraph 8.
Oh, Mike, sorry. Yep.
Paragraph 8, which is basically the tree size thing as well, and there are two different approaches to that. But I'm just wondering if trying to get smaller trees accounted for as working, that isn't going to work as an incentive for behaviour change. It's actually almost like a reason to not change behaviour. Is it seen as that, or am I seeing something wrong?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Seeing something wrong?
You want to talk on that?
Yeah, I'd love to talk on that. Just
we'll come back to
okay.
you.
Yeah. It's just in some climatic conditions, bigger trees don't grow. So if I'm doing all my, I don't know, say salt bush or something, and that only grow up the Hacker Valley will only grow to sort of 3 or 4 metres. Oh, well, it won't even grow that high actually, but it could be a really good sequester of carbon. So why wouldn't you encourage people to, by having that option to go to smaller trees, you could be encouraging people in more difficult growth areas to do something.
I get that, and that's, I think that's a great idea. But I'm just we did talk when we were talking about this. We were talking about accounting for all the fruit trees and everything else that's already in place, and that kind of gave me a bit of a concern. But I don't know if it's a valid concern or not.
I'm just wondering if there's a question of scale here, because behaviour change, yes, and that operates at a very local scale, small scale, farm scale, versus the regional inventory and the national inventory, where the point is actually to have a higher level of awareness of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not sure that it's sort of how fruitful is having a definitional discussion about when really the point is that if you want to actually achieve change on ground, yes, talk about it at a local scale, but it's perhaps not so relevant for the accounting question.
Yeah, it's broad scale versus fine scale mapping, or it's an ongoing conundrum for science, no matter what you're doing, isn't it? Whether you're doing a broad scale look or a fine scale. And I was thinking, as people were talking as well, perhaps the indicators that Gwyneth was speaking about before in terms of the council and capturing things that are really important to this region, and what you've just talked about too, Anne, those native plantings or riparian strips or salt bushes, things like that are important indicators for other reasons as well, that perhaps that's something we do need to be thinking about. And then Kate talked about two different things as well, which is the emissions inventory versus farm planning, and two different work streams there. Yeah, it would be nice to merge everything in a broad scale and fine scale and come up with the perfect number for how much carbon Otago's sequestering. But it's the same as any other science, isn't it, versus SOE, broad scale national picture, versus the fine scale that we might do. So it's something for us to nut out, though, it sounds. It's something everyone's trying to get their head around in different ways at the moment. And do you want to comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's, with sort of satellite imagery and so on, you can actually pick up things like shelter belts and that kind of thing. It's something in terms of regional spatial planning we might be able to think about for the future. It might be something we might want to be capturing.
Yep. Councillor Hobbs.
I went onto the MPI website, and in the MPI website...
Oh, Mike, sorry.
Sorry, love.
Marion, sorry.
I went onto the MPI Primary Industries website, and there are, I'd have to say, you must be aware of this, there are hundreds of different studies going on, not about the plant, the snow tussock, but exactly that, about averaging the accounting, looking at how you can take up small lots, size of small lots. There's an extraordinary amount of work going on. And you just mentioned before about Manuka. I think the incentive for Manuka is coming out of Northland Hapu, who are investing quite a lot in Manuka. Farming is not the right word.
Honey.
Yeah, it's a honey, but they're also planting a lot, and it's getting a go at both sides. There's for instance, there's a hui on right towards the end of October, which is on Maori interests in forestry and emissions trading schemes. So there's an extraordinary. If you look online, what we're talking about is just the very edge of it, and I don't know whether that's our kaupapa or not, but there is an awful lot of work done. Nothing that has been said in this room at the moment, other than snow tussocks, is not kind of mentioned on government websites.
Yeah, I think that's probably very valid. Everyone's trying to get their head around this space at the moment and finding our place in that. It's what we're trying to do at the moment, I suppose. And then also the value of all those other things in terms of biodiversity and protecting ecosystems and
wildfires,
looking after good soils and all those things, isn't it? So finding our place in all of that. Sorry, I think somebody else had their hand up, did they, on the screen, Di? Or no? All good? Okay. Anne, I thought you did.
I've just got one thing to add about accounting for carbon. So after the previous discussion on the inventory, I had a talk with MPI forestry person, and what they, the feedback they provided was that for fruit orchard owners find it quite cumbersome to report the plants they plant and possibly calculate the amount of greenhouse emission that their gardens could sequester, because they change their fruit and they it's just something extra, and they might end up having a net positive emission. So that's something to consider too. It's an added burden to them.
I understand Councillor Wilson has foreshadowed she's going to move this. I would like to invite her to add to her motion a motion for us to send a letter to government asking the sorts of questions we're canvassing around this table. Have you considered this? Can you show us where the other things, not just what they put in the rules, but why they put them in the rules and what they've considered and the other things. And I don't expect the staff to go away and do work on this. I would expect several councillors to get together who care and nut out what sorts of things the questions we would want to be asking, because I think we need to start off, if, for example, where we might be heading is that here's what the government says, and we're heading off to our land and water plan, and locally we want to acknowledge things that aren't just what the government's currently acknowledging or what they might be about to acknowledge or something. Then we may want to do something else there. So I'm just inviting what I think is going to be the mover to see whether they would like to add that to it.
I will see what I can come up with. Councillor Malcolm.
Would it be an option? I can make this a question actually. Would it actually be an option to get those people that are in charge of this to come and address us and let us know exactly what is happening? And
that would be my question, whether the first letter was a question of what's happening. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and they could either come and present to us or, which I think would be sensible to, and even it could be MPI perhaps. I don't know who it would be.
Indigenous forest is being measured, by the way. I've just looked at it.
Yeah.
So,
I was writing.
Forest is being measured.
yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, it definitely is.
As
It's just
people
slow
were
growing.
talking before, I was writing down the types of issues that you raised. So we had carbon sequestration and vegetation other than pines, shelter belts 30 metres, less than 30 metres, farm planning and the role of that going forward. Native regeneration and people chasing Pinus radiata at the moment and the counterbalance. Then we had some stuff about manuka and planting that for its own sake as well as honey, and also some stuff around things like soil conservation, climate resilience with salt bushes and things like that. So alternative types of plantings that you might be doing.
And snow tussocks.
I suppose lucerne might be one of them, I don't know, but yeah. So yeah, there's a whole range of things there, and then there's the fact that we're accounting for the pines, but then the other values apart from carbon sequestration that some of these other species might be presenting. So how do we capture that in a question? Kate, you were thinking, were you?
I've come up with a very simple generic line that is that councillors delegate to the chair, and he can use whoever he likes, writing a letter to MFE to seek clarification and consideration of issues that the current policy framework is presenting to Otago.
And inviting them.
Yeah, well, and inviting him to, staff to come and present. And that just gets that discussion going. I don't want to, it's not saying we know the answers, it's just raising them up, and we capture those questions that have been posed. And the water quality one's very, very high for me. That others will have other issues, but I think it's just start that discussion. If you're happy with that.
Do you manage to get into that? Okay.
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
And
and while they're thinking, what's an exotic hardwood? Can you name one?
Colin? Blueger?
What?
Blueger?
The one you used for decking?
Yeah, There's a lot of eucalypts.
In New Zealand, though.
A lot of eucalypts are hardwood.
Everywhere.
Oh, okay. So
yeah. Cedar, possibly.
That's the one that actually gives out the most in the fastest time.
Bedwood.
Are you still working there, Kate? Or
Because it grows quickly. This is all about growth quickly.
It's not my best. In haste.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's huge. Unstable.
Do you want to read it out, Di, or no? Oh, you're going to cut and paste it and put it up.
It's not a 10-year review.
So I haven't sent it to.
It's not. They don't have in the North Island. What impact there's huge areas of land, a lot of it tussock. There's quite a lot of native.
Yeah, it's kind of
I'm happy to second both the initial motion and that as a supplementary or whatever.
I just wonder whether it should also go to the climate change minister as well, Minister Shaw, because it overlaps clearly. Just a thought.
For them to talk to each other about who might like to come and.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Gwyneth, did you want to say something? No? Oh, you're okay. I thought you were. Yep.
Minister.
Right, we're nearly there, I think, capturing that.
Minister, and he will send us.
The appropriate minister.
Okay. The councillors delegate to the chair, right? So the chair is Andrew, or the chair of the committee.
Sorry, council. I meant council chair because
council chair
to the appropriate minister.
Writing a letter to MFA and appropriate ministers.
Can I suggest that you put an S on the end of that? Appropriate ministers.
Yes,
because it gets them working
Could be
together.
forestry.
That's right, but don't worry. Just do it. And work it.
So letter to appropriate ministers instead of MFA.
So it should say to the chair of council, just with a view to what you're saying.
An apostrophe we just sneaked in there.
To seek clarification and consideration of issues that the current policy framework is presenting to Otago and invite representatives to meet with council.
Is it the current forestry planting policy? What policy is it?
But there's a whole lot of policies that are working.
Yeah.
It's a GHG, yeah. There's so many
It's
of
a
them.
greenhouse gas commission report.
Yeah.
What is it?
The policy framework in this report.
Yeah.
So which covers.
In which report?
Greenhouse gas profile is the topic of this paper, so perhaps it's in relation to that.
The report's
Accounting for a greenhouse gas emission, something like that, and all the issues that presents.
But if it just says policy framework in the above report or in this report, because it raises.
Yeah, that's what
Just to clarify, it's specifically around greenhouse accounting, as in per the report. Is that what you're after?
I think, well, to me,
No.
it's when you're trying to account for your greenhouse gases, there's a whole lot of opportunities you're missing, potentially, issues that are raised.
I think the current policy framework means that you can be as broad as possible once we come and write the letter.
Yeah.
Because it's their framework. Yeah.
I was reading that as a standalone motion. As we do when you don't have the paper. I wouldn't have.
But you wouldn't know that you're noting a report on GHG, so maybe.
Having listened to us, so you might have some of a clue, how would you see that change so as it made sense to you?
Well, I mean, in the broad sense, at least if you reference the greenhouse gas inventory, the Otago greenhouse gas inventory, then we will, some link to that. Otherwise,
I say concerning.
Based on discussions from the Otago greenhouse gas profile update paper, the council is delegated. So what is it saying?
A lot of what we've talked about is the role of native.
It goes in the middle of the sentence, Diane, I think.
Yeah, it's the bulk of what we've talked about, and then you've also got farm shelters. And
issues based on.
You've got a list of those anyway that you two can sit and nut the letter out to get. You can give them a list of.
And it's work.
Yeah.
What were your words, Kevin? Based on.
Go to the YouTube.
Starting it, I would be starting it as based on the Otago greenhouse gas profile update paper, the 13th of October 2021. The council has delegated the chair.
It's splitting. It's not grammatically such a good thing because.
I got school cert English.
Well, you might have, but.
On a recount.
What I'm saying is that what we want to ask of the ministers is consideration of issues based on that. It isn't based on that we delegate it. It's that we ask.
Oh, you're right. Good as gold. Yeah, I'll let you away with that.
And then you can get rid of the current policy framework, can you? Do you need that in?
Yeah, because we don't know what the current policy framework that's actually referred to is.
Clarification and consideration. Yeah, okay.
So
we'll just leave the split. We'll leave the split infinitive because it makes sense.
Yeah, presenting just take out framework that the current policy framework is, and you're taking that bit out.
What split infinitive?
Take that out.
There's one there.
And then it should just about read like a sentence. Right, does that make sense?
Issues are presenting to Otago. Then clarification and consideration of issues based on the that are presenting to Otago.
Yeah. Sorry, Di.
We've already got the issues.
Take out that
just put that, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
One question this is raising for me as well is the second part of the paper, which is that we're working collaboratively with the mayoral forum. And if we're going to write on behalf of Otago, is it reflecting the fact that we're going to write on behalf of all of those people we've agreed we're going to work collaboratively with, or is it on behalf of the Otago Regional Council?
Well, we could only invite others to join us, or that we should refer to the rest of the forum that we're writing it, rather than asking them to join this one.
Well, you could say that councillors delegate to the chair in consultation with the mayoral forum.
Yeah, you could refer this to the mayoral forum for further consideration of what to.
That wasn't, but I'd like it to just go without going through three different.
Okay.
We could inform.
I think we should tell them.
I don't think it means that it has to go to a meeting. I just mean
I don't.
What I think would be really good, Madam Chair, is if they come out at the end and have some of the reps, some of the Wellington people come down and talk to us, that at that meeting we have people from the regional mayors.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Yep.
So that can be taken along. That letter can be taken.
Right, Andrew's got that. Yep. Okay.
Animal made by a commission.
Can you?
Andrew's got that sorted in his head. Yep.
Read that after a late night. It makes sense.
Very clear.
It'll go out this afternoon. He's got it done.
So what were they talking about? Yeah.
Rightio, you motion creators are happy with that? Yep.
Yes.
All right, we'll take them one by one. We've got a mover and a seconder already then, yep, for everything, the noting and the, yep. Okay, well.
So
I don't wish to speak to it. Okay. Hillary,
yeah. Shall we take them one by one? First of all, then, that we note the report, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. And the second one then, which is up, that councillors delegate to the chair writing a letter to appropriate ministers to seek clarification and consideration of issues faced on the Otago greenhouse gas paper, October 21, that are presenting to Otago, and invite representatives to meet with council. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Great. Okay. That brings this meeting to a close. Thank you, everyone.
I've got one more paper.
Oh, sorry.
Andrew's report.
Oh.
But she's decided she didn't want to do it, so she's closed it. She's had enough.
Sorry, everyone. We do.
Good try.
Yeah. Land and Water Governance Group update.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, if I think it's appropriate if Andrew gives us an update on that as the chair.
Just to make it clear.
Oh, microphone, Andrew.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, just to make it clear, it's a report from the governance arm of the Land and Water Plan, Land and Water Regional Plan Governance Group, and from time to time it will come from Gretchen or Edward in the future. Well, we have historically just had verbal updates. So as this is sort of getting to the more the business end or the crunchy end of the Land and Water Plan development, thought it was important that it was a written report. Pretty much take it as read, but I just want to highlight two or three key points. One is Rachel Curry has been appointed as the project manager, so she's going to be involved in making sure as an organisation we stay on track and deliver in a timely manner and keep those work streams flowing and ensure that we have the support that we require. Noting the 1st of October was when the official launch with regards to the Land and Water Plan. It was you'll probably recall the Otago Daily Times had quite a sizable, I think it was about a half-page ad that the ORC's launch of the Land and Water Plan was being triggered, and there's also a considerable amount on the website as well, and no doubt you've all checked that out, and if you haven't, please do so. Just scrolling down, the first two cabs off the rank are Caplan's and Upper Lakes in terms of the next freshwater management units, or ROHEs, that will be worked on. And the WACA meeting is on the 29th of November. And then with regards, that's to the Catlins consultation. And then for the Upper Lakes, you've got the Queenstown and Wanaka meetings on the 17th and 18th of November. And just remember the next paragraph, a couple of paragraphs down, where it talks, plan to obviously consult on the rest of the FMUs, and you will recall each councillor has areas of responsibility in terms of FMUs. And yeah, so you'll be contacted as we work our way through over time, and obviously be encouraged to be involved, just like Gary and Kate are with the Catlins and Upper Lakes. That's probably pretty much from me. Noting on the second page, Gretchen had sent round an email encouraging feedback about a communication plan and the sort of the rollout of that over time, and there was quite a reasonable amount of feedback from councillors, and that's listed in that last section. So perhaps, Gretchen, I'll hand back to you, because that was your initiative.
Yeah, it was touched on at the Land and Water Governance Group that it's important that we talk about how we collaborate and engage with community through this process. And so we have gathered ideas from strategy and planning governance team and Land and Water regional plan governance group, and that's just some of the initial thinking. So we just need to pull that all together, and it'll be considered through the Land and Water Governance Group, but recognising that we have already got a communications plan for the water plan. So that's already happening, as we've all seen. We've been communicating with community, but we kind of felt that many of us have been involved in different rohe already, and it's nice to reflect back on what's gone well and what hasn't gone as well, and then positively and constructively come up with some ideas for how we could work with those communities, to make the collaboration happen and the consultation process happen. They're slightly different things sometimes. And recognising that the time frame is really pretty tight, so we need to be really fine-tuning how we do work with communities to get the really best process we can. It's tighter than it was before because of the RPS and things like that, and the timing around that, and also some hearings that have been ongoing, taking resourcing, I suppose, and input into those, and a bit of uncertainty. So really narrowing our focus on how can we be as effective in working with our communities, recognising that the FMU process is quite prescribed as well. We've sought feedback from everyone so that we can be positive and we can be our best ORC working with communities. So, I think, Gwyneth, maybe if you want to say how it will be looked at within the staff as well.
We're just desperately trying to find a time for us all to get together, and so that we can, package up something that reflects all those ideas that have been put forward, and bring it back to you.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for working as a team on that. I think that's really important. Sorry, Kate, you've had your hand up a long time, and then Councillor Calvert.
So the one thing that I'm not quite sure, and it's the question to Andrew since it's his report, but it may be going out wider, is just understanding if it's the FMU councillor who attends or whether you are encouraging and inviting other councillors to attend as well, because I think it's interesting to have all of those ears around the tables when you're doing that, but I don't want to also go into an area and offend someone. And that's the first question. And the second question is iwi representation if they wish to be there, or how we could encourage that to start building that relationship if possible. And I don't want to be a burden, but that is one part that I see missing, and whether we can enable a resource, Okaha or someone to take that role. I think it's really important, if we're going to get the most out of these, to start those relationship buildings. But I'm keen to hear from Edward and Lynn on that as well.
The first one was around land and water governance group and whether or not other councillors could come.
Oh, no, it's going. So first one's Gary's in the Upper Lakes Rohe. He'll be presenting on that, but are you expecting that other councillors who may be around could and should attend or not? And I'm not quite sure, and I think we need, maybe it's a discussion for tomorrow morning when we're all together, but I certainly wouldn't want to be standing on his feet, but I would be interested in hearing, as I think most people would, because the lakes are so pivotal to our image, what that discussion is. So I think we need to come up with a joint thinking on that.
I'm interested to hear what other people think, but I'd initially say that everyone would be welcome to come along.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
Even if we worked on the same principle, I'm just thinking with Kadrona and Arrow, the invitation was sent out to all councillors to attend, and I'm not sure there might have been 3 or 4 or 5 that attended along to support Brian. Brian was the spokesperson for governance at the Otago Regional Council, so I imagine that we'll follow that same pathway.
Right. Thank you. I just want to have it out there.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Councillor Calver.
And
I would quite like to.
My second question.
Oh, okay. So, sorry. Yeah, there was a second part to that. That's really important. Yep.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'll jump in now. There was a useful discussion around engagement that we engaged in. Post that, I've seen the draft communication plan from management dated August, I think it was, which is quite comprehensive as well. And I think that it talks about engaging Okaha staff in the FMUs. So, we'll need to talk about that. But in terms of the first cab off the rank, Catlins and Upper Lakes, I've been having some offline discussions with Southland, because it's obvious that the LWRP GG is terms of reference is provision for 4.
Oh, yeah.
4 iwi reps, two permanent, I think, and then as we move into the different FMUs, we might approach the relevant Runanga or iwi, part of the iwi. So I think we need to, they're interested, that we just probably need to formally follow that up.
Invitation, yeah.
Because the same people, Southland, I'm talking about. Someone from Southland, whether it's Te Ao Marama or one of the Runanga.
Right.
So that's partly how we do that. If we're doing North Otago, that 4th one, we'd go to Moiraki or
that's great.
Whatever. But I'm thinking the current management communication plan, more talks can go on there with Okaha in terms of what happens in the FMUs.
Upper Lakes would also be Southland potentially.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Catlins and
both
Lakes
of them.
involve the same people.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah.
Right, okay. Very good. So we can address that but I mean, it's already in the terms of reference. So I guess it's just an invitation that we need to get underway ASAP before the next meeting, really. Yeah. Councillor Calver.
Further to discussions on earlier things about listening and information dumps and other things, I wonder whether it would improve our relationships with the variety of the communities we end up in if we could be a wee bit clearer. We're usually in the thick of it and we know what we're trying to do, and there's a comms plan that says something like go and talk to the community and whatever it is. But when we get to the community, they don't necessarily know what we're there for. They just know that there's a meeting called by us probably. And I wonder whether it would be helpful to be clearer about what we're doing there. If we're there to provide information, and then people can ask questions, namely sort of information dumping questions, then they should know that. And if we're there because we genuinely want to hear what they've got to say, then we should say that. And if we're listening to them with them thinking that what they say is going to be summarised and taken into account even if not followed through, at least listened to and taken into account, then they should know that. So to me, when we have a meeting, it would be really useful, I think, for our relationship with the communities, for them to be really clear what we're doing there.
That's a really important point. So yeah, thanks for making that.
Things like alert level 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, because sometimes I feel I'm listened to, and we weren't intending to go and listen to them. We were just going to go and tell them something.
Yeah, I do quite like that analogy to the alert level, whatever, some sort of consistent way of sharing what the purpose of the engagement is at each.
And what will happen afterwards because of it. So if the purpose is telling them, we can tick the box when we've told them. If the purpose is listening to them, collating information, and then feeding it into a process.
That's good, Yep, good feedback, thank you. Councillor Forbes.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to, where we ended up, I don't know how many of you followed it, but it was a very interesting discussion between Kate, Mary and Edward around iwi engagement. And of course, that's a very specific thing. And we need to consider how we engage people that don't engage like white middle class people, which includes Brazilians in Queenstown that have been there for 100 years, and Chinese ethnicity people around the place, and of course tangata whenua Māori who aren't part of Kaitahu. And I just want to make sure that we have something that looks to those outliers, and certainly I would have thought that for, I just mentioned this very briefly to Ed, and I might have it wrong, that other Māori, or Māori in general, is probably easiest to reach through Kaitahu some way or another, rather than us trying to do that on our own. When it comes to Brazilian members in Queenstown, of which is more than 1,000 people now, I don't know. They're not going to show up to our community meeting.
Probably can't.
Soccer. Or the Western Union Bank, probably, like something like that, yeah. That's just my thinking.
Councillor Hobbs.
That actually I always have a discomfort in these meetings when the use of the word community gets mentioned, because I always think that people have their own community in mind when they talk about community consultation, rather than the whole lots of other people. And I'm not talking about ethnicity here, nor am I talking about treaty partners, but I am talking about, the kind of people I live with out in Port Chalmers. It'd be very difficult to get them to any wretched meeting. Do you see what I mean? And I think Alexandra, as compared with Manahira or Balclutha with the Catlins, do you see what I'm trying to stretch out? That sometimes we think of the immediate, and yet with the questions of environment, which is what we principally deal with in here, it affects everyone, not just the people who make money out of land and water.
Yeah.
And maybe that is going through forest and bird and fish and game. And
two important things. One is that the way that we communicate and engage in each FMU needs to be slightly different too, to ensure.
Absolutely.
So we've already got that in hand. And
it's particularly unique in the Waitaki.
Well,
I'm just teasing. I just wanted.
Yeah, but each community is different and likes to engage in different ways. That's true. And then the word community as well, and what that means, and it's used, I suppose, in the legislation as well in terms of how you need to engage through an FMU process. So totally hear what you're saying, though, that a community is its broadest sense. Councillor, I've got everyone. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, cool. Slightly different topic. So this is the governance report on the land and water regional plan. Something that I raised, I think, at our previous meeting is some evidence that we're actually tracking on program. I mean, the minister's written to us and there's been various comments. And it's something that I raised with Gwyneth at the last meeting. And I don't care whether it comes through the governance arm or whether it comes through staff. Personally, I think it should come from staff. Some ongoing evidence that we're actually tracking okay, so it's actually one of the parameters that is actually referenced is how we're tracking on program, and only when we get an indication of that, we'll be able to understand better the implications of asking for extra work. Whereas at the moment, it seems to me from a governance perspective, the reply is, oh yes, no, we're tracking okay. And okay, so we don't need to be necessarily abreast to the detail, but there's like half a dozen FMUs and ROE and this type of stuff, I'd like to see some as a live thing. So I'm turning up at a meeting thinking, actually, we're slipping behind. So if we ask for this, it's a bit over the top. Or yes, we have got a bit of spare time here to be doing some stuff. Or is there a resource issue? So without trying to get into much operational detail, I want some evidence. I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Can I just ask something in there? Because I'm a bit worried. Given that this council, and it's a political arm, has said, yes, we'll do this, the Maini Hirakia, and it won't cause any problems.
Yeah.
And then to turn around and ask staff, it's almost if they were to say, yes, it is causing a problem, they're running against us. And I don't really want to force that conflict.
I think, through the Land and Water Governance Group, just which is the paper, and we're reporting back on where we've sort of got to in our latest meeting. We did see a work program for what it would look like, and it was really useful. So I think it's a useful question, Councillor Scott. I think that table would be really useful for all governance and also all community to see when, how they can expect us to engage and when. And sure, it may change a little bit as we go through, but we can be open and transparent about that. But everyone needs to be able to plan when will they see ORC, particularly probably all the stakeholders who are going to be involved in numerous ones of these and need to plan their work programs so we can all work together.
It's not just about whether we're on program. It's in July.
It's there. That's all I'm saying. And I don't know how we're going to get that reported back through, but it'll be really great.
Yeah.
Paul,
If you look on the website, it's got the timelines of the consultation. The version you saw as Governors has a bit more detail in terms of papers and some internal kind of milestones, but in terms of the public-facing element, that stuff's on the website.
Oh, brilliant. There you go.
Under each FMU.
Okay, but still, in this, my question is ongoing, from it's not even referenced in terms of how we're actually tracking. I'm not trying to be smart or anything, but it's important. It's important to me to know that we're tracking, other than somebody says, we're tracking. I want some evidence.
Agree. As a holistic
So if that's
program,
on the website, where are we in relation to that? Or is it constantly changing?
Council, no.
Comment, and I'm trying to be helpful. So this graph here. The first 2 points, which are Catlins and Upper Lakes, are the first 2 dots in November. So it's the beginning of the timeline. So I suppose all I'm saying is that we're starting in this process now. Absolutely get your point. Every update from the governance group, we include a timeline as part of the paper. I think it's absolutely critical.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Cool.
That's up.
Just looking at that thing.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions or comments, Councillor?
Just on that, one thing, we've set up a program. The team's underway doing it. We will be getting quarterly reports. I think that initiative's really good. But what I don't want is staff spending an inordinate amount of time reporting back to us on detail that we're going to get in a quarterly report as well.
Fair enough. Maybe it's just in the quarterly report.
Yeah, and that's just the balance. So don't get too tied up in too much. And just going back to our current way of doing things, I'm just going back to the regional policy statement consultation that has been done. I felt at each meeting that I went to that the people there were very engaged. They did say that would be good to have more people there, but they were very engaged and understood apart from Dougal McTavish, who thought he came to the wrong meeting, but left excited and delighted with what we're doing. So
it's because he went to the wrong meeting.
but I think that general process that we do is is pretty good. So I commend the staff on that, really.
Can I make a wee offer? Which is on the communication plan, and you've got down there, and it talks about involving schools. Regardless wherever I am, I would willingly help with that. That is my profession. And it is about knowing when is a good time with some schools to contact them. Okay? Because often people do things at the end of the year in senior secondary and they ain't there. And they don't want to give their time to anybody.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Rightio, this is a noting as well.
I'm happy to move that we note it.
Thank you. Seconded Councillor Wilson. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. And now we can close the meeting. Thank you.
Good on.
Now we go. All right.